Good evening. I would like to call to order our August 16, 2022 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. We would like to welcome those in attendance as well as those watching at home or streaming online. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Director Miller,
I'm here.
Director Richardson, Director Webb,
Here.
Director Peck,
Here.
Director Wright,
Here.
Director Campiris, Director Wyrick, Director Phillips,
Present.
Director Adcock,
Present.
Vice Mayor Hines,
Present.
Mayor Scott.
Here. We'll now take this time to recognize City Director Cappy Peck for the invocation.
Tom Carpenter is going to take care of that. Thank you.
If you would join me, please. Throughout the histories of our many, many diverse populations, we all have a story about people trying to speak one language. And in virtually all of these stories, the languages become quite diverse. This diversity adds color and meaning to our lives. It helps us to understand how something seemingly simple to one person is truly fantastic to another. But our differences in language and our backgrounds can create incredible problems if we don't focus upon interest. If we just want to take a position, we're almost saying that what we're offering is not true, because the moment that we vary from that position, we're saying it really wasn't the position in the first place. As we come together tonight, let us listen to the language of all of us. Let us glean the interest we have for the citizens of Little Rock and guide us into making wise decisions. Amen.
Amen. May we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Mayor Hines.
Yes, Mayor. I have a request for a deferral for 30 days on resolution number 2, Madison Valley. The neighbors there still aren't quite sure we've got a solution. And after Director Honeywell's email late yesterday, want to sit down with the city attorney and him and figure out, and the adjacent property owners to figure out what we can do to get a actual solution to their water problem.
I hear a motion. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. We'll defer that. We have 7 modifications for tonight's agenda.
Mayor?
6, I apologize. Vice Mayor?
Is it 6?
6.
Okay. There's 7 on our write-up we're sitting in front of us.
We just believe we moved.
You have 7 modifications.
All right.
So I asked that we move items M1 through 5 to the consent agenda and keep items M6 and M7 separate.
There's a motion. Director Phillips?
Just for clarity, Mayor, I thought we just deferred M2 for 30 days.
No.
Item 2.
Item 2.
Item two. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's where I got confused as well.
My apologies.
So we do have 7 modifications. Vice Mayor Hines is asking to transition M1 through M5 to the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Director
Mayor.
seconded it.
Director Wright seconded. Discussion from Director Wyrick.
I didn't want you to go too far. I have some questions on M3 and M4. And so rather than them being grouped, I'd like them separate, or I could go ahead and ask the questions, whatever your
I'll
pleasure.
withdraw my motion if Director Wyrick wants to hold those separate as well.
I just have a couple of questions about those two.
So I'll redo my motion, a motion to put M1, M2, and M5 on the consent agenda.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
And then I make a motion to put M3, M4, M6, and M7 on the separate.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, read the consent agenda.
A motion to approve the minutes of the March 15th, 2022, April 5th, 2022, and April 19th, 2022 Little Rock City Board of Director meetings minutes, and the March 29th, 2022 Little Rock City Board of Directors special called meetings. A resolution authorized the city manager to enter into a contract with R. Valadez Construction, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $166,067.78 for the 13th Street Drainage Improvement Project and for other purposes, funding from the 3/8 cent capital improvement sales tax and the limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with First Security Bank to provide banking services to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas for 2023 and 2024 and for other purposes. A resolution to express the willingness of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to participate in a cost-sharing agreement with the United Methodist Children's Homes for improvements to Charles Bussey Avenue and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute any documents necessary to accept a donation of property located at 4409 West 25th Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. A resolution to transfer the title of property located at 9712 Eva Lane from the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to BIIG LLC to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs and for other purposes. A resolution to consent to the assignment of a certain lease agreement as amended for the benefit of the Oakland and Fraternal Historic Cemetery Park, to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute a fourth amendment to the lease agreement and consent to assignment of lease and for other purposes. A resolution to set September 6, 2022 as the date for public hearing regarding proposed expenditures from the Edward Byrne Justice Assistant Grant and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Smart Automotive Group in an amount not to exceed $76,753.60 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of 2 Ford 1-ton trucks for Public Works Department Street Operations Division and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Game Time in an amount not to exceed $61,528.78 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase and installation of 2 triangular shade structures for the elephant exhibit at the Little Rock Zoo and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Little Rock School District to continue a school resource officer program in the Little Rock School District for the 2022-2023 school year, beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Pulaski County Special School District for a school resource officer program in the Pulaski County Special School District for the 2022-2023 school year, beginning July 1st, 2022, and ending June 30th, 2023, and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to purchase the annual renewal subscriptions for licensed Adobe project for a total amount of $58,588.52 to support City of Little Rock business processes and for other purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Move for the adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the items.
Which items, Mayor? The
You want me to start at
separate
12?
items?
Separate items.
Okay.
The separate items on the consent, or on the resolutions, or the,
M3, I believe. Be that one. I believe we have M3 for, my memory is correct, 6,
That's in
7.
Okay. A resolution.
And then we'll go to item 12.
Okay. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with ACS Playground Adventures in an amount not to exceed $121,751.85 plus applicable taxes and fees for construction services for the Western Hills Pavilion project and for other purposes.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and second. I'm sorry, Director Wyrick.
Thank you. I asked to hold these separate because I had a question. Leland called me last week and was telling me that these two items were 3 and 4 were coming up before the board tonight. And I'm excited about we're finally getting a pavilion and a restroom at Western Hills Park. But I had one of the neighborhood folks that have been active in development of the plans and things like that. And when Leland talked to me, he indicated that our sales tax dollars were going to build both of these. And what I don't know is that we had a national parks grant. That was a piece of the dollars from the sales tax. And what I want to know is, will we still have that national parks grant? Does this in any way prevent us from utilizing the dollars from the national parks grant if we use, excuse me, if we use all the sales tax dollars, which was a matching for the grant?
Mr. Couch or
And it was about 800,000, I think. So.
Ms. Moore?
Sure. Director Wright, it does not impact the grant. We still have the money set aside for the match. As you remember, we did set aside, I think it's $1 million for Western Hills. So this is just in the sales tax. This is just appropriating that money, but it does not impact the grant at all.
Okay, I understood him to say that this was the last of the sales tax dollars that we were using here. That's the reason for the question on the grant.
We had set
You're saying there's still more sales tax dollars out there?
We had set aside the dollars for the grant, correct?
Okay.
So we don't have any more besides the set aside.
You don't have any more besides the set aside?
Okay. When we say we're using the entire $1 million, that's these two projects in addition to the money set aside for the match.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'm good then. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, M4.
A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with CXT Inc. in an amount not to exceed $115,000 plus applicable taxes and fees for construction services for the West Hills Pavilion project and for other purposes.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
There's a motion and second. Seeing no questions from members of the board, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. I believe we have, this is M5, Madam Clerk? M6.
A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a 4-month contract extension with 5 organizations in a total amount not to exceed $297,663 to provide prevention, intervention, and treatment funds for 12 positive prevention programs for 2022, as endorsed by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families, and for other purposes.
Move for the adoption of resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Director Adcock?
Yes. Could someone explain why we're doing this for 4 months?
Mr. Sanders? Someone can get Mr. Sanders.
He's here.
I would hate to see these programs end before the school year ends in case these providers do not apply again. Then we've got children moving from one program to the other. So, Mr. Sanders, can you explain why this is just for 5 months or 4 months?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Mayor and Board, City Manager. Director Adcock, if you recall, when we went into COVID, we moved programs to 6 months because we were anticipating changes and shifts with COVID precautions. And so with those extensions, we've kind of ran out of 6 month extensions, and it's left us with 4 months left in the year. So if we ran a bid or an RFP, potentially it would leave students, kind of without programming between this August 30th period to December, and then between the time that we can get a new contract signed and approved by the board. And so we're looking to extend for 4 months with the anticipation of during that time having a 12-month RFP or bid go out to the public, giving us time to put our new process in place where we're providing some technical assistance that was requested by a number of vendors to help guide them through the RFP process, explain the RFP, give them a chance to answer questions or ask questions and get them answered per the bid, and then get a comprehensive proposal together, and then with the anticipation of starting the new 12-month contracts January 1.
I just don't want us to come to December and children not have programs during the holidays.
Yes, ma'am. We've been working on that bid for some time now, but now we've looked at it and we want to move toward age specific. This bid was kind of, I guess the last contract, specific language was not in there, or clear language where providers would have to respond specifically for our 6 to 11-year-old age group, and then our 12 to 18-year-old age group. And we want to be able to have them or require them to specifically address those age groups. For we know that, for example, if you're doing programming for career readiness, it should be different in terms of your activities that you're putting out for those specific age groups. And sometimes we've seen or noticed in our monitoring that it's kind of streamlined the programming. And so we want to be more effective and efficient with our contracts.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Director Adcock and anybody else who has a question. I just wanted to give a shout out to Michael Sanders and the team. The CYF has been to visit almost all of these sites, and I personally have been to all of them but one just in the last few months. They're doing a great job. Michael is doing a great job, and I've been impressed with the programming and the way that we're doing, and we're committed not to leave anybody in the lurch. And in fact, we talked to Director Wyrick on Friday when I was in her ward visiting a site, that there are too many kids who are on waiting lists who are not in programs, and I know that the community programs is on top of that, and we'll be working really hard to make sure a lot of these additional kids get covered as we move forward into the next year and into the school year.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Director Richardson.
Is guaranteeing that we have one full year program in which we typically, when we issue RFPs or RFQs, we typically do those for 1 year program. Is that correct?
Correct.
And this extension will take us through the end of this year. So it's essentially providing, long story short, providing 1 year programming for the participants in those programs that we're talking about tonight.
Yes, sir.
And that's par for the course for how we've been doing this for 20 plus years in terms of the issuance of RFPs and RFQs for new programming, regardless of the age range. But this is par for the course in terms of how we've been functioning for quite a while. Correct?
Yes, sir. Correct. And then if we started it, August 30th, it would put us kind of in an off cycle, and we wanted to start January 1 with a full 12-month contract, so that we can provide services throughout the year and anticipate extending those per year.
And this is, if I heard you correctly, a temporary reaction to the COVID pandemic, and what this is doing and what we plan on doing is getting back to how we used to do business pre-COVID. Did I understand you correctly when you said that?
Yes, sir. Correct.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Director Webb, is your hand still up? Other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you read item M7.
A resolution to approve the settlement of federal litigation and for other purposes.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Director Wright?
Mayor, I have some constituents here to express some concerns about this particular settlement, and I want to hear from them, but I also want to share my concerns with my colleagues regarding this. I've had in-depth conversations with our city attorney regarding this, and I understand why he's moving in this direction. However, this development, once constructed, will have an irreparable effect on that particular neighborhood and on one street in particular. And I just believe that we need to do everything that we can to protect our single-family neighborhoods. I know my colleagues have heard me say this over the years, and I've expressed my frustration with our zoning, where we allow multifamily to be directly next to single-family residential homes. Whether we like to acknowledge it or not, it does affect the value of that home. Real estate appraisals matter. And these people have invested their life into these homes. They've lived here for many, many years. And this particular development will disrupt their quality of life, the level of traffic that will be there. We can put as many speed humps as we want that will not take away the increased traffic on that street. It's a very quiet street. I'm very familiar with it. They are now currently enduring interruptions to their daily lives with the construction, the noise, people starting work at 5 o'clock in the morning. They can't sleep, dust all over their cars. And so they're getting a precursor to what's going to continue, in my view, to be a disruption to their quality of life. And if we move forward and adopt this resolution, these neighbors, these residents need to receive some type of compensation. I had asked for an alternative route to be an alternative egress and ingress from this particular development. I presented an option that will allow the Dover Drive to be closed so that there would not be any traffic on Dover. I also asked that this developer be required to build what he told us he would build, which was senior housing. As I understand it from this settlement, that is off the table. But I do know from talking to some of the residents over there that their property values have already decreased, and I feel that they should be compensated for the loss in value of their homes, because these are older people and they should not have to sell their homes at a loss if they can sell them at all. And they shouldn't have to sell and move. As you know, it's easy to sell a house, but it's very difficult to buy one these days, because when you get ready to buy, you will find out that the price of new construction is extremely high. And I just want to let my colleagues know that this is not acceptable to me as their representative. I feel that they are getting the short end of the stick and they did nothing to warrant this. This is something that is being done to them, and I would like us to entertain their comments, Mayor, before we take a vote on this, so that you all can see the faces of these people that I have to look in when I go out there. And I know what they're dealing with, and I've expressed to you over the years and in the last 2 years about multifamily developments, how they impact single-family neighborhoods and the quality of life that people are accustomed to. So I would like an alternative egress and ingress from that development. I would like them to be compensated for the loss of value of their homes. And I also would like an explanation as to the property not being properly subdivided. Would that prohibit the number of units that could be constructed there? I do need that question answered, but I do want you all to hear from the residents that live on Dover Drive.
Thank you, Director Wright. Before we go to the agenda item cards, Director Richardson, do you have your hand up?
Hear me?
Yes, sir.
Because apparently during roll call, you guys couldn't hear me. And that last item, I voted nay on the extension of the contract. So for some reason, when we're talking about these items like that, if we ask for a roll vote, when I speaking to it. Somehow I'm not being heard, but I want to be duly noted. I voted nay on that last item that we just approved, the extension of the contract.
Yes, sir. We'll make sure that Madam Clerk notates your nay vote.
All right, thank you, Mayor. That's all I have. I don't have anything on this.
Thank you so much. We'll now proceed to the agenda items for residents. State Representative Fred Allen.
First of all, I want to say good evening to you all, and thanks for allowing me to come here and make a few comments today. I'm grateful for the work that you all are doing here in this community, Mayor and Assistant Mayor and City Manager and all of you all. It's good to see my colleague, Captain Webb. We served in the General Assembly together. And also, I appreciate all the hard work you're doing. And Doris, I want to thank you for all the hard work you're doing in Ward 6. We appreciate you so much. One of the things I want to talk about today is a few years ago, I went to church and a pastor preached a sermon. And the title of the sermon was, "Why Are You Here in the Sanctuary Today?" So since this is not a sanctuary, I'm going to tell you why I'm here. I'm a resident of Dover Drive, been a resident for over 20 years. But life as I used to know it on Dover Drive is not the same anymore. I wake up every morning at 5 o'clock to the sounds of trucks, tractors, people nailing and doing different things out there in construction. And not only do I wake up, I go to bed. Some nights they don't quit working out there until 7 and 8 o'clock at night. And the earliest they started rolling one morning was around 4:30 in the morning. There were 13 concrete trucks going up and down the street. They were pouring concrete. And what has happened since then, our property values have actually gone down. I refinanced my house a few years ago, so I talked to the real estate agent, and she said, "Fred, every time you have a development like this, your property value goes down." And I'm going to say this. It's difficult for me to sit here and tell you all that this is the typical development in the city of Little Rock, because it's not. I can't think of no community in the city of Little Rock or the state of Arkansas where they will allow a developer to build right in the heart of the community. Every morning, every day, we see trucks going up and down our street. And like Director Wright said, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's a prelude of what's finna happen. We have a lot of elderly people on our street. Some are disabled, and some are just, when they moved over there on Dover Street, they moved with the understanding that they would retire on Dover Street. I did the same thing. I moved over there thinking that this would be my last house, but now, at the rate that they're going, and we all know what happens when we build those kind of developments in our community. And I must be sensitive because there is a need for it. And there's also a need to protect the neighborhood. So it's a balancing act for me. But what I do know is this: if we don't come to some type of agreement where we can work this out, and I know the settlement that's on the table, it's not for the community, it's for the developer. And those things that's offered in the settlement, those things are not going to help us to improve or increase our property value at all. And our standard of living, our social living, all of that is now changed because we now will have roughly 100 and some residents, and I welcome those because I'm the state representative out there, and Commissioner Director Adcock, those are going to be my voters. And so, I'm not against the development. I'm against where the developer put the development. And since he put it there, it is going to do harm to everybody over there in our community. So one of the things that we want to see that the street to Dover Drive closed off. We want to make sure that they have an alternate route. And the third thing is, I think that the people on Dover Drive and the people of Kensington needs to be compensated. And I'll be honest with you, I cannot go, a man of my pedigree cannot go into a non-minority neighborhood and do what this guy's doing. There's no way. As a matter of fact, if I tried to do this in some parts of Little Rock, and I keep it real with you, every person, every woman, every man, every non-minority would be out there with an AK-47 or AR-15 blocking the street saying that I can't do it. And that's just a fact of life. And we're not those kind of people. We act real civilized, we're real courteous to them. But what happens, Director Wire, every morning I have to go move my car. I cannot park my car outside. And that they did so much construction out there one day, and they were hammering and nailing so they cracked the ceiling in my bathroom. They actually cracked the ceiling in my bathroom. So now I have to find somebody to repair it, but that's not a problem because I'm a contractor myself. But I think that you all are doing this neighborhood, our neighborhood, if this happened, this is a great disservice, and this is totally injustice. Not just if this was in another neighborhood, I would feel the same way. My mother told me when I was growing up, she said, son, there is no right way to do wrong. And this is wrong. And I know you all have to make a decision, but I want you all to remember the residents in Kensington, because long after you all make this decision, we are the ones that will have to live out there with the consequences of the decision. And some decisions have unintended consequences. I think there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences. And it all goes back to the developer. The developer will make all kind of promises on the front end. But once that the development is completed, we are on our own out there. And I appreciate you all putting up a security system and saying that it's going to be tied into the police department, but that will help some. But we really need to address what's happening on Dover Street. And I feel that this resolution does not truly address what happens on Dover Street. And I want to sincerely thank all of you for your time and allowing me an opportunity to come here and speak. And the people on Dover Drive, I want them to stand up. We all came down here. You all can be seated. We all came down here today so you all could see that the people on Dover Drive is united. And we could have had more people than that if we had asked the people of Kensington to come. The last time we had a meeting in Kensington, we had over 75 residents. And so I ask you all today to consider Dover Street and consider the decision that you all will make today and what you all are going to vote on and what impact it's going to have on Dover Street, because it is not going to help us improve our property value. It is not going to address the real needs of the people on Dover Street. But I want to sincerely thank you all from the bottom of my heart for giving me an opportunity to stand and make a few comments today. Thank you and God bless you.
Mayor.
Thank you, State Representative Allen.
Mayor.
Director Wright.
Before you move to the next one, I want to make sure that my colleagues understand the Kensington neighborhood. If you've never been over there, it is an aspirational African-American neighborhood. There are no weed lots, there are no junk cars, there's no crime. People take care of their properties. It is truly something to be proud of, and I am very proud of it. This is devastating to me, but I did want to get that on the record so that you know that there are stable neighborhoods, predominantly African-American neighborhoods in our city. And this type of development, I believe, is going to upset that neighborhood. As far as the stability of it, we just don't know, but I have precedents on my side to look at because I'm very familiar with Ward 6, as my colleagues can tell you. And I know where all my apartment complexes are, and I know what the issues are that I have with each one. and I know the type of development that they are, that they started out as and what they turned into over the years. I have a base of knowledge, and my past knowledge and experience with this is that this does not bode well for that neighborhood. But I just wanted you to know that this neighborhood is very stable. I don't know the last time I saw a for sale sign over there. You just don't see it. There's no turnover. There's, as I said, no crime. People are very, very settled over there. So this is very upsetting, just to bring it into context for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Britt? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor and directors, actually, I spoke for the group, and I think that anything else that we say would be kind of redundant to what I've already said. And I know if you all want to hear it again, I can give it all over again to you. So, but
What we'll do is acknowledge the names just for the
okay,
record.
that's good. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Britt? Yes. Ms. White? I'm just acknowledging names. Harold Shirley? Joffrey Shirley? David Williams? Ms. Elna Ricks? Ms. Jackie Griffin White? We'll now go with our city board members who have some comments. Director Richardson?
Yes, man. I don't have the hard copy in front of me. Are we, Bruce or Tom, are we voting on a civil matter, or are we voting on the actual development? Are we voting to settle some civil, municipal litigation, or are we voting on a specific development? Because what we're voting on right now has nothing to do with the development. We're voting on civil litigation. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So our vote tonight, yay or nay, is whether or not the city should settle with the people based on what they've seemed to have claimed to have suffered during a negotiation with us for this development. Is that correct?
The development was approved in 2015.
Okay, so the development already been approved. What we're voting on tonight is a litigation, civil litigation with the developer. The development has already been approved, from my understanding. So thanks for clearing it up for me, Tom. And that, Bruce, you sing from the same hymnal on that?
Yes, sir. What is before you is your new policy regarding settling of litigation that the board passed earlier this year. So before the city can settle any litigation, the board has to review it publicly.
Thank you. That was my recollection. Thank you, sir.
Director Wyrick?
Thank you, Mayor. Director Wright and Mr. Allen talked about compensation to the neighborhood. I'm not sure what compensation would look like in regards to helping them, because there's an apartment complex next door to them. But I'm curious to know if we looked at the egress and ingress that Director Wright brought up in regards to closing Dover Drive, or some sort of additional access to this community. Was that a part of the negotiation? Is that possible to do? What would that look like, and did we look at it?
I think, Director Wyrick, there are certain things that Mr. Carpenter has included in this settlement. There are certain things that Director Wright has just shared that she would like to see added, which would be some similar things that way. I think it really comes down to whether or not the board wants to include that in the settlement. And we have not done any to my knowledge, the city attorney has not done any calculations on compensation. And so it'll be for the board to share that, or staff can go back and look at some calculation, visit with some real estate appraisers and do some research and come back with a number for the board to consider to add to the settlement.
Okay.
Director Wright, I think what it may be best if Director Wright, if you could take a brief moment just to kind of share what you would like. Seems like you want to add some things to what's before the board.
Well, if we can't add it to this, and I do understand Mr. Carpenter's settlement, I understand that. I just believe that we owe these residents something. This development is right next to the cottages to reorient you all, or orient you to where it actually is. The cottages has a driveway that they have had difficulty maintaining over the years. And as a matter of fact, in my second term on the board, there was an attempt by, at that time, CATA, which was Central Arkansas Transit, to actually stop bus transportation going into the cottages because they failed to maintain that drive. Mr. Moore worked with me to make sure that didn't happen. But there is a possible egress that would not have traffic on Dover Drive if the city worked with the cottages to improve that and turn that into a street so that the traffic could flow from this new development onto that street, which would be a lot less of an intrusion upon the neighbors on Dover Drive. So there's that option. And then there's another option where there's property that this development backs up to. Now, as I understand it, that may be a little bit more difficult to do because it is private property, but I don't know if there's been any attempt to see if we could purchase that or if that could have been used as an alternative entrance. To me, this cottages route would be a better option because of their need to maintain that drive in there, and it's directly adjacent to it. You couldn't tell that until all the trees were actually cleared for the site development. That's when it became obvious that there was so close there. And then the other option is, as I said, not other request is that there be some type of financial compensation, because I really, to just be perfectly frank with you, I think these residents have a case here because this is not their fault. There were mistakes made when all of this started. And this process actually started in 2015. Director Adcock, Director Wyrick, you all were here, Director Compuris. This was proposed in 2015. The developer was not successful in getting the tax credit, so the project kind of died. He came back and apparently went to the Arkansas Development Finance Authority and made application, and then he contacted the city in 2019 for a building permit, and the zoning was certified without alerting ADFA that there were conditions on that zoning. So he moved forward with that, and that is what it's causing all the problem here. But my understanding is that the property was never subdivided, which will not allow them to develop as many units on it as they would like. That's why this is actually listed in this settlement, that they will be able to subdivide the property. That property was not properly subdivided.
Well, and the reason I'm asking it is because this is asking us to settle with the developer. And it sounds like none of this was taken into account with the developer. And so any changes that have been proposed would be at the cost of the city.
Exactly.
Okay, so the alternative routes, what you're talking about would be at a cost for the city. But the settlement agreement is to resolve the issue between the city and the developer. So whether we come up with additional plans or compensation, it's on the city of Little Rock. Is that
exactly?
Is that the way we all see this?
That's the way I'm seeing it. If we go ahead and move forward with this settlement, we as a board can can go back into this once we get this settled and address the concerns and issues that this neighborhood is going to have to live with.
Okay, and the other thing is, the neighborhood's talking about the time of work starting at 5 a.m. and working as late as 8 p.m. Do we not have regulations to limit the time of work for this development?
Yes, we do. Director Wyrick, I contacted our planning department and alerted them to this issue. The problem that we have been experiencing in the city is the heat. So most people that work outside are starting earlier and quitting at a certain time in the heat of the day. Now, I don't know about this working till 8 at night, but I do know that's why most people start early in the morning to beat the heat, in other words.
But it's not helping our residents.
It's not helping our residents. Their quality of life is being directly impacted by this.
Mr. Carpenter, are you listening to what I'm asking? And do you have any comments in regards to the compensation and redirection of traffic into the subdivision?
Director Warwick, the negotiation started with the concept that the developer would build a roadway in that would avoid traffic on Dover Drive. It never got off the ground. We continued to try to press it. Part of the problem is that a lot of the property, if not all of the property, is owned by private individuals. And so it would be a function, if we were to build a road there, for the city to actually condemn the property and take it, and then to build the road after that. Both parties thought that they had and still think they have relatively good situations. We did look at the situation about taking the road through the cottages. And the conversations I had with Public Works and with the Planning Commission are that the road would not deal with the traffic. We would basically have to completely rebuild it, and it was going to be several $100,000 or more. I mean, I don't have a number right in front of me. I just know it was going to be a deal. We went through that. So when it looked like we were just going to trial, I started thinking about a place a few blocks from here that is the halfway house for federal prisoners. And every discussion we've heard tonight, we heard those nights when it was being discussed. And what was put into the agreement was a process that doesn't require people to go to court, but effectively, starting in January 2023, when they expect to do it, would have a regional officer, a senior regional director, and others meeting with the neighborhoods, being prepared to do it monthly as long as they needed to do it, to be able to discuss the problems that have arisen and take care of them. I talked to Mrs. Williams, is it Terry? I can never remember her first name, who runs the halfway house, and she said, we had many meetings the first year or two, and now we have trouble getting people to think we need one. And it's our hope that that's what's going to happen here, that, you know, when I hear people are being awakened at 5 o'clock in the morning for construction in the summer, I think that's a violation of our code. And I know that there were some violations that were occurring that dealt with drainage problems and mud getting out into the streets, and we got that addressed by code. So I kind of like that idea for two reasons. One, it's worked in the halfway house. Two, it worked. If it works here, this isn't the only time that we've been told that a multifamily development next to a residential development is going to be disastrous. And so maybe we can make a policy of the city that if you're in that type of situation, you will have to put in this type of agreement that has the recognized meetings in there. The other good thing about it is that if the neighborhood meets with the developer and the developer doesn't take care of the problem, then I think we've got the basis for the city pursuing a nuisance action, and that's what we would do. And we would use the failure to negotiate with the owners to be able to say, this is a nuisance. You've been told about it and it didn't stop. One other thing that we did that's in here since I'm talking is that there is a really nice lake that's for the people in Dover Drive. And this agreement takes the access to that lake, which the apartment dwelling now has, and cuts it off to those in the apartment dwelling. Now, the father of a teenager, our city manager said, how are you going to stop a kid? And I remember when mine were teenagers, and I know he's got a good point. But I also know that the developers agreed to signage and to take steps, and I know that that's going to be the first thing that we hear about, and hopefully that will be taken care of. So yes, we did look at the road issue.
Regarding the disturbances that are going on over there, Representative Allen wanted to come back and speak on that. Did you want to speak on that? Okay. I can't let you, the mayor has to do that.
Thank you, Director Wright.
I'm doing my job.
I appreciate you. State Representative Allen. I believe you're taking, all you have to do is just say yes. You're taking Ms. Britt's time.
Of course. Thank you for allowing me to come back and make a few comments. Tom, I heard you said a few minutes ago that the settlement was for the developer. Is that correct?
I didn't understand what you said.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, you can. I just didn't hear.
Okay. I heard you say a few minutes ago that when you all reached this settlement, it was for the developer.
No, I did not say that.
Okay, my apologies. Maybe I misunderstood you. So would you explain?
I said that.
Oh.
It was a question on my part. Was this settlement just for the developer? Did we take into account your compensation, the access to Dover Drive, those things? So if you heard that, it was me, and mine was in the form of a question.
Oh, okay. My apologies. But I do want to say one other thing. I know you want to put up speed blocks and cameras and all that, but it's not going to make up for what's happening in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood will never, ever be the same. You know, we have a lot of elderly people, some that are handicapped, some that are bedridden, and some just live in the neighborhood and they came there to retire. So now our neighborhood has been turned upside down. I mean, totally upside down. And there's no way that, and I know we talk about compensation, but there's no way that real compensation can be measured compared to what we're losing. We have actually lost our neighborhood because of all the traffic that's going to be coming down Dover Street. I can't even, with just the trucks coming in the morning time, the address of the development, Kathy, is 23. My address, City Manager Moore, is 19. So here's 19, here's 22, and 23. My house is actually about, from where I'm staying here to where you're sitting, that's how close the development is to my house. And with traffic coming out every morning, there's no way I'm going to be able to back out of my driveway in the morning time. I don't care what nobody says. It's going to do a lot of harm to our neighborhood. And that's not what the city wants. I think that we all have to come together and try to be good neighbors and come up with a remedy or a regimen so that's going to fit the neighborhood and that's going to help the developer too. So all I'm asking you all to do is to take a good look at this, and from the bottom of your heart, I'm asking you to do what's right. And what's right is to work with the neighborhood, make sure we have some alternatives, and to make sure that the people in our neighborhood get some type of compensation because our property value has gone down. I mean, really gone down. And if you can show me where a development like this will increase property value, I'll shut up and won't say nothing else. And we'll walk away. We will actually walk away. So I'm asking you all, if you can show me that, then we'll walk away. But based on what my real estate agent told me, that our property value is going to continue to go down every year. It's going to decline every year. And so with that in mind, I hope you all will search your hearts and spirits and do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, State Representative Allen.
And Mayor,
Director,
I
Mr.
had
Director
one more
Wright.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't hear Mr. Carpenter speak about the fence. Is the fence a part of this? Because that recreational area was supposed to be fenced off on this development so that there could be no actual pass-through from the development to the Kensington recreational area. Is that a part of this? Because I didn't hear you say that. And when I read this, I didn't see the fence, but I know we had discussed the fence in depth because there's no other way to prevent it, to prevent access if it's not fenced.
Director Wright,
I don't recall seeing that. And
I don't remember exactly what happened on that. I know that the giving up the right to enter the property is there. Mr. Wyatt's here from the developer. He might be able to address that.
Well, we'll keep going, but if you could take some time, Tom, to figure out if the fence is included based on what Director Wright has just shared. Director Adcock?
Yes. I can understand this. I can show you. I've been sitting here thinking about all the developments in Southwest Little Rock that was just like this. I can think of some that's over in some of the other wards that has been like this, that when you put apartments this close to residential, there is a price to pay. The traffic. Is there some way, Mr. Carpenter or Mr. Moore, Mayor, that we could cut off Dover and put another street coming into this property? I'm afraid compensation would just open up all these other developments over the years that's had this same problem that never received anything. But if we could close off Dover Street to this complex and make them use another street, maybe the one in the colleges or something, but to stop the cars going through the neighborhood. And Mr. Carpenter, maybe what we need to do is tonight say, let's table this for a week while we look at our alternatives and see if there is something that we've missed.
If we don't come to agreement tonight, we go to trial starting the 29th of August unless we are kicked out of court by their summary judgment or they're kicked out of court by our summary judgment.
Well, Mayor, then my question, I guess, is can we go ahead and say that we are going to cut off Dover Street and look at another alternative street going in and out of this complex?
is that a
I
motion?
think the city still owns the streets. So it looks like we could just put a street in that would serve this apartment complex and keep it away from the neighborhoods.
I know there, because we got a lot more questions, so from other board members, so I won't necessarily respond just yet, Director Adcock, because there may be other additions from other board members. And so one of the requests, and I'll ask, I don't know if Mr. Collins is in the room, or Mr. Hood, but if they can confer in regards to cutting off Dover Street, please confer and just get with me shortly as to what that looked like, what that would take. And again, as you shared, Director Adcock, I know this is a lot of discussion to make a decision, to understand what our city attorney is sharing. He's giving you the time limit on whether you settle or go to court. It's up to the board on what we do. And so I want to make sure the board is aware that you guys are giving direction to the city attorney. The city attorney has given his legal opinion, but you ultimately are the deciders.
Mayor?
1 second, Director, right? Just because I want to make sure we get to, I know you and we will get back to you. Director Campiris.
Tom, just a couple of practical questions. can we change this without any representation from the other side?
Well, no. I mean, they would have to agree to it, and as I understand it, Mr. Wyatt is here today. I don't know if anybody else is. He couldn't make a decision on his own.
So basically, this is a negotiation.
Yes.
That you and the developer, or the city and the developer came to, is that right?
Yes.
So we're talking about changing something that they're not here, is that right?
Yes.
And I presume that's at least not ethical, but probably not legal. Is that right, Antoine?
I'll defer to the city attorney, but I think he said if we make changes, they would have to agree to it. This would just be offer extended to the developer if we made changes.
And Director Compuris, I want to be very clear. When you say the city negotiated this, the city attorney negotiated this, he's based on his legal opinion. I wouldn't necessarily say that the Office of Executive Administration is supportive in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but the city attorney, which has to act on his legal opinion, has made this negotiation.
Well, I don't differentiate. I think the team is the team, and y'all are all members of the team. So we just have to disagree on that. Secondly, can we have Mr. Collins come up and go over this again with us? Because I'm, at least from what I understand, from going over this all of this period of time, and I think Doris did a great job of summarizing it. An agreement was made that we all made, and then things got confused in the middle and permits were given, and now we're in this situation. So I'd like Jamie to go over this again.
That's what the legal issues are.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. They came to y'all to change a PUD for Arkansas Hospice and turn it into a multifamily development. They told you on the night that the ordinance was passed that it was going to be a senior development. And throughout all of these discussions, nobody has complained about a senior development. Director Collins has told us that there's no difference between building a senior development and building this development. So in terms of the construction period, those problems would have been there anyway. The board and the neighborhood knew that there was expressed opposition, and at the last minute, the developer came forward with a letter that said that they were going to keep one portion of the property as senior property if they could get the, in accordance with an ADFA package that they had pending, and one of the people told you they couldn't even wait 2 weeks or they wouldn't even be considered, and that if in the next 5 years from that time they had, they developed the rest of the property, that it would also be senior property. The board did not pass the ordinance. It was 5-4. The mayor at that time had the ability, and it was Mayor Stodler, had the ability to vote to pass a measure, so he voted to pass it. Before the 5 years was up, and this is where the litigation comes to a key, before the 5 years was up, they applied for another ADFA loan just to be multifamily. They came to the city and they said to the housing department, isn't this multifamily? And the housing department said, yeah, it's multifamily. And they signed off on it. And at some point they got, this is a verification that it was zoned multifamily. What they didn't get is the statements in there as to whether or not this was going to be senior housing or not. This issue came to the attention of the board when Director Wright brought it to us, and I think, well, I know that I thought there's nothing we could do. It was, 5 years past go, but we looked at it kind of carefully and thought, no, maybe there is a thing we can do. So what the city did is we asked, was this going to be senior housing? We were told no. The building permit was suspended. That's when the lawsuit was filed. They've had 30 days to appeal that suspension. They did it on the very end of the 30th day, virtually, and had an expedited hearing, and the Board of Appeals, the Housing Board of Appeals, said, the building permit comes back, the zoning issue is not for us to decide, which was a pretty wise decision. They claimed that they lost several millions of dollars in the development in that process, and that there have been other damages since that period of time, that they've got to finish this by a certain date. If they don't get an extension, then they will lose their tax credits, and that's several more millions of dollars in damage that they will claim the city caused. We claim maybe you weren't as open with us as you needed to be, and they point out, Mel, maybe the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing, but both hands said city. And so what will a jury decide when it comes to a property issue? And we both have really strong arguments, and I think we've both got really good legal teams, but the fact of the matter is you don't know, and you live in a state that considers property rights pretty much above all other rights. And so our Constitution says that. The right of property is above all others. So, that being the case, now we're looking at what happens if we settle this. Well, if we settle this case, we cut off the access to the lake to the people in the multifamily development who have it now based upon how the property was set up. If we settle this case, we know that they're going to put that board in effect with people that can make decisions and not just somebody who's hired as a property manager for an apartment complex that can't make any decisions, and try to get them addressed. We know that the security system that they're putting in place will tie into our digital camera security system as we need it with the Little Rock Police Department, and will be made available to us. So in terms of problems with apartments and who's doing what and who's not doing what, all of the camera data there will be available to us if we think we need it because we can't solve a problem. And it's over. And as I said earlier, if the mechanism we put into place to make sure that the cooperation goes on between the development and the residential neighborhood becomes a policy for the city for future developments in residential neighborhoods, then we will be achieving something that way. In terms of the road, it has proven to be, well, I mean, I don't know what cost prohibitive is, because if it was a couple $100, it'd be cost prohibitive to me. But the developer makes it quite clear it would be cost prohibitive. We don't have the money to do that. I thought that the idea about improving the road through the cottages that Director Wright brought up was a great idea, and it got just shot down quicker than anything. So now where we are is, let's look at the scenarios. Judge Wilson grants a summary judgment tomorrow, or the next day, or sometime this week. That would be great. Judge Wilson also entered an injunction against
City Attorney.
Enforcement of a, I'd like to finish if I
No, I just want to add a clarity. I'm not interrupting you.
Let me please finish.
Okay, all right.
So Judge Wilson granted an injunction to keep us from enforcing a building permit in the future if they didn't build what they were required by law to build, and they said that that was egregious action on our part. I don't understand that. We initially appealed that. The trial date got set for the end of August. I knew that we weren't going to get an appeal heard by the 8th Circuit and decided him back before that happened, and the way that it went up procedurally, that wasn't going to stop the trial. So we decided, let's focus upon what's going on in the trial. And anyway, that's how we got to where we are.
And City Attorney, I'm sorry for interrupting. I just want to add a point of clarity. When you said that the idea about the road was shot down, that wasn't shot down by the court. That was shot down in negotiations with the other side, correct?
That was shot down by what I was told by staff, that it was not practical and that the road wouldn't.
Oh, shut down by staff. Okay. I just wanted clarity on that. Thank you. Sorry.
Director Computers.
Still not clear on that.
So the bottom line, if we approve this, we're done, and I feel bad about the neighbors. But if we don't approve it, then we go to trial. And what's our risk of going to trial?
That's why we.
If we win, you'll wonder why we settled. If we don't win and they get a multi-million-dollar verdict, we'll have to set that money aside into some kind of bond. The court's been very good about letting us do that without actually buying a bond. And we can't do anything with those funds until we've completed the appeal, which can be 2.5 years or more. 1.5 to 2 years or more.
And if we lose, does that change anything from what's going on right now?
If we lose ultimately all the way, then there won't be a group that will work with the neighborhoods as to what's going on in the apartments. There won't be the connection to the cameras. There won't be the cleanup of, or the taking care of there's a roundabout there that they're going to take care of, and landscape and such, and anybody can have access to the lake.
And we have a huge potential liability.
I'm going to argue that we don't, because the zoning decision was actually made 5 years ago, but that's a lawyer comment.
And so, Director Computers, that's what I'm trying to share with members of the board. Our city attorney has a time constraint based on his legal opinion that's independent of operations. We have to have that legal opinion on how we decide to move forward. There's no decision until the city board makes a decision. We execute the decision once the city board has made a decision. So the question is, A, do we settle? City attorney has a time constraint. When's the case, city attorney? When's the trial date?
It's last week in August.
29.
So that's number one. Two, the city board can decide to go to court and figure out through that, or even an appeals process. And the question is, does the city board, has to make that decision on the legal opinion versus what we're hearing our residents say today. That's really the decision. Do we want to listen to that versus the legal opinion, in which you both clearly weigh heavily on each of your mind? And so that's the decision before the city board today.
Mayor.
Director Wright.
In response to Director Computers, I understand your thought processes. I've observed you for many years and I know how you think. If we tell Mr. Carpenter, okay, we don't want to face the possibility of all of this liability, what's to stop us from giving him authority to move forward, but also committing as a board to address the concerns of this neighborhood with alternatives? Because trust me, it's a lot cheaper to put in a new street than it is to pay a multi-million-dollar settlement. That street's not going to cost multi-millions of dollars. It's just not. I mean, the streets that I've had put in Ward 6, where I had chip seal, ditches, at the most I've seen was 1.4 million, and that was on a hill. I've seen them for 250,000. I've seen them for 100,000. To get these residents some type of relief from that traffic, which is going to be a major issue. I just don't think a couple $100,000 is too much money. I've seen us spend a whole lot more and get a whole lot less. That's what I'm saying. If we want him to settle this, can we not commit as a board to address the ingress and egress, even if we elect later not to do any compensation? I understand what you're saying. We have other issues like this. That's why you've heard me ask over the years, why can we not as a board change our zoning laws so that there is a buffer between single family and multifamily? You've heard me say that time and time again. There has to be a way to do this. We cannot keep putting single-family residential homes in this type of predicament. And we've done this over and over. But just because you continue to do the same thing, it doesn't make it right. And we see this is a real-time situation that I wanted this discussion, because now you can look at these people's faces, you can hear from me, you can hear from them. This zoning is a problem in this city, and we need to address it. This does not need to happen again.
Mayor,
Hold on 1 second, Director Richardson. 1 second. Let's make sure I get the queue ready, so I don't know who else is up. We got you, Director Richardson, then Vice Mayor Hines.
just back to the question again, and I'm glad Vice Mayor Hines is right behind me because I want Lance go back to my cognitive dissonance approach. Tom, what are we voting on? We're not voting on a development. Are we voting on your recommendation in terms of liability, the best direction for the city to take? Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's all based on what you and your department have been dealing with this company and their lawyers for, I don't know how long it's been, but we approved this it was approved in 2015. But what we're voting on right now, if I voted yay for what's proposed, it's not a vote to support that development. It's a vote to support selling your negotiations in your department, our departments, involving with them in the court systems. In our likelihood that this is probably what they say it's cost them legally to do the work they've been doing to address issues that have been brought up tonight. So we're voting on not a development, we're voting on whether or not we're going to take your advice as our city attorney and settle. And you've come to us many times before with settlement offers, and for some reason, since January of this year, we seem to have a lot more interest and concern about settlement offers that's coming from the city. But this is not unlike anything that we've done before, where you've recommended certain things based on your experience and your involvement in the judicial system, and then we can say, yay, Tom is smart, or nay, Tom is crazy, and then we're gonna let him go to court and let's see how it plays out in court. So the issue right now is not a vote on the settlement. On the development, it's a vote on a settlement with developers and what they spent to date dealing with us in the court system. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we're all clear on what it is we're voting on, whether or not we're going to take your advice and your experience as our city attorney and go with that as the best route for the city.
Vice Mayor Hines.
I have a question for Director Collins. Jamie, how long has this multifamily 18 zoning existed on this property? It predated this application.
Yes, it did. It was the board action that Mr. Carpenter was speaking about. That was when the revocation of the plan development happened.
Okay, so there was an underlying multifamily 18 on this property?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so my next question is, in our master street plan, was Dover Drive designed as the only access to this piece of property? Because as I look at it on my OnX real estate deal, the property's landlocked other than the access to Dover. So that's what I'm trying to clarify. So was Dover Drive on the master street plan as the only access to this piece of property?
To date,
that was already zoned multifamily.
Yeah, the only road that ever was proposed to go north on Dover Drive was prior to a couple of department directors from me, was a subdivision that originally was proposed from the very get-go, right when the property was annexed into the city, but was changed very shortly thereafter. There was no public road that was dedicated to go up and proposed to be built up to Aldersgate.
Okay. So the other question I have is, before all these houses on Dover Lane or Dover Drive were built, did that multifamily exist before they built and bought their houses?
I believe I'll have to look at the analysis, but when some of them come in and built their homes, it was actually underneath the planned office development that was in place. Some of them, when they actually bought the tracts of land but didn't build the home, the underlying, the MF-18 was in place.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you. But the MF-18 has always existed before the planned office development, before the planned residential development? That's what I'm trying to get, is when, in what order did all of this stuff come?
The very first order is when the development happened, residential on the east side of the lake. There was a proposed residential development on the west side of the lake, a single-family residential, taking up multiple tracts of land all the way up along Aldersgate. Then it was rezoned to multifamily on that side of that tract of land that they're on right now. And also the tracts of land that are adjacent to Dover that are single family right now were multifamily. It went down from MF 18, and I believe it might have went down to 12, but those tracts were on the east side of Dover was to be multifamily. They come in and rezoned those tracts a single family prior to any of the planned office development that was redone for that care facility that come in.
So what you're saying is the multifamily existed before the planned office development?
Yes, it did. There was a point in time that it was the straight zoning, which is the underlying zoning. So when you revoke the planned development, it fell to the underlying zoning.
So if all this was revoked, it would still have a multifamily 18 zoning?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Director Wyrick?
Well, Director Hines has asked the questions that I was going to ask, other than if Mr. Collins can tell us if it is there a way that there could be a new access into the neighborhood as opposed to using Dover Drive and everybody using the multifamily and the single family using the same street. Tom said that the staff X'd that possibility early on. So can you speak to that?
Well, the question that was proposed to staff was, is there any means for public access other than Dover Drive to this property? And that answer is no, there is no public access.
Or to the subdivision?
To
The multifamily or
to the multifamily subdivision at the end of Dover Drive, multifamily MF 18 zoning, that tract of land, Dover Drive is their access. The only other access would have to go whether you went to the north to Aldersgate, and that's the one that we ran some numbers on what that would cost, just on the construction cost alone, not right-of-way purchase, because it is private, and we didn't run numbers for cottages. I'd have to, if Tom was talking about numbers, I don't remember running those numbers, but the cottages is also private. And, typically we do not want to take what would be one entity, a separate entity, through another tract of land unless that road or access is public or dedicated for public use.
So it was a private street, is what you're talking about?
All private. Yeah. The only public street is, other than Dover, is to the north, which would be Aldersgate, but you'd have to go through private tracts of land to get there.
My other question is for Mr. Carpenter, and so if we decide not to settle with this resolution, what happens to the construction? Do they get to continue building as we're moving on, as we go through trial? Because it sounds like they're working today.
It's going to be constructed. If we don't settle, it's going to be just constructed anyway. It's multifamily. All the best the city could ask for from the litigation is that the multifamily be limited to senior housing.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, my hand's still up.
Director Wright?
Mr. Carpenter, there was a particular mention in your resolution that the developer be allowed to subdivide the property. Because it wasn't properly subdivided before he began construction, will that limit what how many units he can construct there?
Part of that's a good question for Jamie.
He needs to come back because that's very important.
Yeah, the subdivision issue, it it was not done. This takes care of that. But even if it's subdivided, it's going to have to comply with our requirements as to density.
But that's not my question. My question is, if we don't vote to settle this and we proceed to trial, him not having that parcel properly subdivided, what limitations are there to his development?
Well, it's going to be density, which he will address. Being zone multifamily, though, not allowing the subdivision is not going to be something the board can do if they meet the requirements.
So why even put it in the settlement that he would be allowed to subdivide it if there's something that our department cannot hinder?
We thought that we should get rid of everything instead of doing that and then coming back in a month and start asking you about subdivision or whatever it would be, and you say, wait, didn't we already take care of this? So this was just to get it all taken care of at once.
Mr. Collins, since the parcel was not subdivided, how many units can he put on an unsubdivided parcel?
When we figure up density for MF18 zoning, first it would have been for both right now, the entire tract of land, and they would meet that. And even in the subdivision of what they have on track right now proposed for that subdivision, they would still meet that density. We would look at setbacks, any type of variances as needed. I do not believe there would be any variances that would be needed, and therefore it would meet the minimum requirements for a subdivision. And the density, they would still meet those requirements for the MF18. It would be more of an access and a setback issue on the subdivision. Density is per the zoning. As whether they can get that depends on setbacks, where they can place the buildings, the amount of parking, and how they place the parking in the subdivision. But they would be able to meet those with the layouts that they have for the required setbacks. So I do not believe that it would affect their unit count or their density, whether it is subdivided or not.
So really, there's no reason to even put that in the settlement, is what you're saying?
Well, they have to, like I said, meet that subdivision requirements, which would be access. Every legal tract of land has to have some form of public access. I believe they have that with the cul-de-sac or the roundabout Mr. Carpenter was talking about. At the end, it just has to be a viable access for public use.
I think there's something I'm missing, Mayor. There's something I'm not grasping here, and I've studied this thing thoroughly, and there's something I feel that's being left out here, and I can't put my finger on it. But access is Dover Drive. Doesn't have anything to do with cul-de-sac. They gonna drive down Dover, drive into this development. The only reason to me to have for this subdivision part to be in here is if you're gonna access or egress out another way.
Well, there's other reasons why an entity may subdivide a property on there. It could be for just ownership reasons, different phases of development, even subdivisions.
So in other words, there can be something else going on this site if we allow it to be subdivided, which it hadn't been so far.
Well, currently the zonings, the MF18 from the revocation, they have already submitted in plans for the second phase, which is multifamily. So at this time, they would have to come back before the city and propose something different if it was zoned differently and rezone the property for a different type of use other than MF18. If they chose something different as far as building, then it would have to come back through the building permit process and be reviewed at that time separately.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Director Peck?
Thank you. City Manager Moore, would you share your opinion about this, please?
I remember very vividly a conversation that we had with Mr. Carpenter when it was, Director Wright properly brought the issue up in this forum. There was a lot of discussion at the board level. There was a question asked of Mr. Carpenter. Were we on strong legal ground to pull the building permit? He applied in the affirmative that we were. I also would say that when asked that question today, after being out a little while, I saw the emails back and forth about a settlement. And so the question was asked today by me to Mr. Carpenter, are we still on strong legal ground? And he again answered in the affirmative. And I'm not, Tom, if I say something wrong, please interject. But that said, he did feel, along with his chief deputy, that there had been some information that they had, they had gleaned during depositions. I know for me, I gave the longest deposition I have in my 20 years in this case a few months ago. But that there had been some information gleaned, not necessarily in my deposition, but multiple depositions that seemed to indicate that the city could have potential issues going forward. In talking to some of the representatives today, Representative Allen, I think the main crux of what I heard is our issue isn't necessarily with the developer anymore, it's with the city. And what can the city do to help compensate us going forward? I think we're probably very limited, excuse me, in what we can do. Jamie explained the Dover Drive situation. So we're not in a win-win situation at all. There's potential major exposure, according to Mr. Carpenter. So I think the board is in one of those cases that I don't like you all to be in, where there's really not a lot of choice in the matter.
Thank you, Bruce.
Director Wyrick?
Well, I'm thankful for Mr. Moore and his analysis of where we are, because I'd come to the conclusion that multifamily was on the books for a long time, and the only hope we had to soften the approach would be with for seniors only. And so there's a lot of property in our city that's already zoned multifamily, and people buy homes next to it, and they don't realize that it's already zoned for something else. So I feel like that's kind of what's happened with this. It's disturbing, it's sad. It's happened to us in Southwest Little Rock. I thought I was going to be hung up with the rope a couple of years ago when somebody decided to develop multifamily that was already zoned. And Mr. Collins and I went out there and looked at it and talked to the neighborhoods and this kind of thing. So the lesson I'm getting from this is to make sure that when you buy a piece of property, you know what's next to you. Even if it's undisturbed land, and you think it'll never happen, it could happen someday. So we just have to, when we're buying property, we have to know that. It's disturbing that we're put in this situation and we have to make this decision. The compensation, it's going to be difficult to come up with what would help them. The potential for another street to eliminate some of the traffic is probably our best scenario with this, is what I'm thinking. So it's not a good situation.
Mayor,
Director Wright?
I want to clarify something. I looked at some old deeds to this property, and this particular site was supposed to be Kensington Phase 2. I do not recall seeing a multifamily designation as the underlying zoning on here. When these neighbors purchased their property, it had already been donated to hospice, and it was a planned unit development. That's what we revoked, or this board revoked. I voted against it in 2015. That was what was revoked in 2015, a PUD. So a lot of these neighbors bought these homes back, in the 70s, 80s, and they purchased with the understanding that this property would be a hospice center, and there was a PUD on it. So for us to say—
Unit development, is that what I'm— Yeah, and so that's still on the scheme of multifamily.
A PUD?
Yeah, I'm not the expert on planning, but Jamie could probably tell us that for sure.
And see, that's another issue there, because we need to clarify where multifamily goes. Either it's MF 18 or 12 or whatever you're going to do. It doesn't need to be lumped in there with things that people are not going to understand. Who is buying a property going to take that deeper dive? You almost got to be on this board for years to figure it out. And to expect a regular citizen to be able to figure this out, that's not something that most people will understand or be able to do. They thought it was going to be a hospice there. I heard that over and over. They bought out pavilions. I looked at it. It said hospice there. And before that, it was supposed to be Kensington Phase 2, single-family residential homes. That's what everybody thought. So I don't see how any of this is something that they should have did due diligence on back in the early 80s or something.
Maybe Mr. Collins can help me out with that.
In 95, 6/27/95, it was MF 18.
In 95?
In 95. That's when it got rezoned to the planned development by the board. Went to the planning commission and the board. But I do want to emphasize, you are correct. That was a phase of an overall residential development, but that was prior to when it was MF 18. When it come through, I had to go back and look at all the files, and I don't have all those files on the digitally. When the Kinston Place, the east side was originally proposed, there was another residential proposed. But it did not last long that they rezoned that to multifamily. So that—
The original owner did?
Yes, the whole west side of that, all the way up through Aldersgate some went to multifamily, some went to office style or different type of use. And in the east side of Dover Drive, not Kensington Place subdivision, but those tracts of land that are directly adjacent to the east of Dover Drive were zoned something different than single-family residential. They come back and rezoned it to single-family residential. And I can pull that up real quick.
What was the hospice? When was the hospice proposed? Because I actually saw that on a map.
The hospice was proposed in 2001.
And it was allowable to be built there under that zoning that existed?
It was that was that hospice, the one that got, revoked. That was that planned office development that was put on the property and approved by the commission and the board in June of 2001.
So there was that. So the neighbors did think that they had a hospital.
And yes, and I went back and looked at them, and there was some that bought the tracks, but hadn't built yet on the deal, and there wasn't that many that had prior to the planned office development, but those actual tracks were rezoned themselves. From a multifamily 6, and part of it was also 18, back in that 91 timeframe. So even prior to 91, there was some sections of that were multifamily all the way down to 36th Street, along Dover Drive.
Well, if we move forward tonight with this and follow Mr. Carpenter's recommendation, Mayor, can we, as a board, commit to working with these neighbors to try to find a solution to this? I don't know what else to do here. I understand Mr. Carpenter's position. I understand the liability that the city faces, but I also understand that these neighbors are going to be very much inconvenienced here.
You and I share the same sentiment.
And I hope you all noted that Mr. Collins did say that he never ran any numbers and on the alternative street for aligning with the colleges or even making any contacts. I would like us to at least pursue that, because I know that that is the closest access and might be the cheapest route. But if the other development that's on the other side that'll come out where Aldersgate is would be a little bit more pricey, as I understand it. But I just would like us to be able to at least do something.
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me. Members of the board, we've now gone through, I know Mr. Carpenter has gone through a litany of the history behind this action, which dates back to 2015. I think we've heard from the community. You've heard from the city attorney and the city manager on the analysis of all this. The decision rests for the vote. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye.
Yes.
Nay.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Roll call, Mayor.
First, I need to state that what I heard the ayes have it. Vice Mayor, you now saying a roll call?
Yes, Mayor. Roll call.
All right.
Can you tell Mayor? Can you tell us what we're voting on, please, and so that we can know, and those who are the viewing public and those who need to know and those who have concern, can you tell us what it is that we are voting for or against?
Yes. The resolution before the members of the board is to enter into a settlement in regards to the developer of the stated resolution. I called for the vote, heard ayes. Vice Mayor Hines has asked for a roll call.
And Mayor, point of order on the roll call.
Point of order, Vice Mayor. One other question. If I heard correctly, did the city manager say that staff is recommending approval of this course of action, or am I putting words in your mouth, Bruce?
Mr. Manager, you want to share?
I tend not to weigh in on legal matters. Director Peck asked for my analysis, and I gave that, but this is purely a legal matter, which I think falls within the city attorney's purview.
Thank you, Bruce.
Mayor, point of order on the roll call. Since we have a member remote and our past practice has been on separate items, and especially since this is involved in litigation, I think we need to be on the record with our votes.
Has a roll call been made, Madam Clerk?
Director Wright?
Nay.
Director Wyrick?
Yes.
Director Campuris? Yes. Director Phillips? Yes. Director Adcock?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Richardson,
Yes.
Director Webb, Director Peck,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Hines.
Yes.
9-1.
Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 12. Director Phillips, your hand. Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to state to my colleagues and to Director Wright, I appreciate her passion on this issue and definitely support you trying to get some relief for the citizens going forward. And I think there is an opportunity for us to do other things beyond this settlement to provide a way to provide relief for them. So as you consider that, I'm saying publicly, I'll be trying to be supportive with you in that regard. Yep, just want to say that, Mayor. Thank you.
Same here.
Director Richardson.
Same here, Mayor. I meant to take my hand down, but I support and echo what Director Phillips just said wholeheartedly.
All right, Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 12.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development to establish a planned residential development titled Woodlands Valley Revised PRD, located on the south side of Cooper Orbit Road at Canis Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. First reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it, second reading.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned residential development titled Woodlands Valley Revised PRD, located on the south side of Cooper Orbit Road at Canis Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it, third reading.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned residential development titled Woodlands Valley Revised PRD, located on the south side of Cooper Orbit Road at Canis Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. I do have agenda cards. Mr. Brian Dale.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Directors. Brian Dale with Joe White and Associates here representing the applicants. We would like to reserve our time for any questions.
Director Wright.
Mayor, I just want to go on record. I'm not opposed to this development, but I do know that the traffic in that area is horrendous, and I want to reiterate my request from our previous discussion that we have an updated traffic study and that a traffic signal be there installed at Cooper Orbit and Canis. So I know that we did one in 2019, but there's been a lot of multifamily developed in that area since then, and I think the traffic warrants it now. So my question, I guess for Mr. Collins or whoever can answer it, is when will the traffic signal be installed, and will it be installed as a result of this project? I did get some questions today from people that live out there in that area.
Well, the plan for the development, as the board is aware, is to extend Cooper Orbit, tie into the existing currently Panther Branch that we will not keep named Panther Branch when we do the extension. I've met with the developer and went over a configuration that we believe for, at this point in time, because even Canis is not built out to its full standard at that intersection, that would allow movements for a right turn going back east on Canis, but also allow for a through, and going to the left on Canis, and then somebody receiving lane coming down, and possibly a decel or a right turn lane to go south on Cooper Orbit. The plan at that time to make that extension is also to put in conduits to pull the infrastructure and pull boxes as needed on Canis, so that in the future and that's the timing when the traffic signal is warranted, because it would be a minor arterial intersection, I do believe, at that time, that it would be signalized if that road got ultimately built, but you wouldn't want to ultimately build that road until the traffic warranted it. But we will analyze it once that connection is made and traffic is in place. A new traffic study will be made and a determination made at that time on the warrants of the signal. And so that was the schedule and the timing of it. So that, because we didn't want to put the signal in necessarily until it is warranted, because that could also cause issues and situations there. Now, does it warrant it with the number of traffic that is going to be additionally generated from this development? I think is the main question, and potentially depends on the movements that come in. So we will analyze that when the connection is made.
Well, then the residents in that area totally disagree with you. They know that they can't get out. And it's...
And I do agree with that and understand right now at the existing Cooper Orbit and Canis, there is it is not the most configured properly intersection. You know, it comes in and makes a bend before it ties to Canis. Public Works did go and install some improvements at that intersection to help out for right turn movements, to help with the stacking. And as development occurs, even if Cooper Orbit wasn't aligned, it would better that intersection. But I believe this alignment would help alleviate some of the situation that they're seeing right now at that location. And an analysis will be performed. Like I said, once that road extension is made and turned in, we start seeing the traffic generated on that, then analysis will be made.
I think that's the best I can hope for. But we will do one, and that's what I shared with the residents today that contacted me about this.
Yes, a typical process is we either a developer or the city would do a traffic impact analysis, but even if you do one prior to development, it is a what-if scenario. It is not necessarily that's what's going to go in scenario. We do have some signals that have been installed but was not made operational because the warrants didn't, warrant analysis did not say that we needed to operate the signal at that time. So it's the same process that we do for the intersections. The only different thing for this one is we want to go ahead and put in the underground conduit so that when we do want to install that at that time, it can be done without interruption of Canis for pulling of all the wiring and the conduits needed for the signals.
Thank you.
Director Wyrick.
Thank you. Doris has already jumped in on what I wanted to talk about. I got the study from 2019, and I'm not a traffic engineer, so it's a little bit hard to understand, but it looks like that possibly for Cooper Orbit today, it already meets warrants for 8 o'clock and for, what's 19 o'clock? Is that 7 o'clock? 7 p.m.? And this analysis was done in 2019, and since this analysis was done, I've been apprised that there was an apartment complex, Landmark Apartments, with approximately 200 units on Cooper Orbit. They're currently building phase 2 of Landmark Apartments, which is another 200. And then we're going to be adding the Woodland Hills development, which is huge, lots of opportunities to get on Cooper Orbit Road. But I can tell you, based on this analysis, I went through there at 2 o'clock and tried to make a left-hand turn. It said that there were 43 at 2 o'clock in 2019. I could not make a left-hand turn. Where did Jamie go? I thought he was still there. I could not make a left-hand turn. I wound up going right and making a circle through a driveway and then going back left. So the neighbors believe it's warranted now. I believe it's warranted now. So at the earliest opportunity, I think we need to look at doing this. those people have put up with a lot of stuff in the years with the road construction and lack of road construction and half-street improvements and lack of half-street improvements. So we're about to get them a good street to get to Canis, and just as quickly as possible, we need to get that traffic light put in. The question I have is, you have numbers on here for Canis Road, and if I look at where the warrants are, then they're exceeding, Canis Road is exceeding the warrants. Am I correct about that? Because it's showing that a major street would be 600 for condition B, and each one of those hours that are listed on here are higher than 600 cars. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, in the morning, that's what you're looking at.
Well, it looks like it's all day. It starts at 8 and ends up at 1900, so that's all day, isn't it?
Well, I'll have to look at the warrant that you're looking at there that says 600, that's vehicles per hour.
Okay,
And that's the ones traveling on Canis.
okay. But
I
when you
would say
look down
yes,
at the
that's about
bottom,
what's
it's got-
traveling on Canis. There's probably a little bit more traveling on Canis
Yeah,
currently than what it was previously, because some of our improvements that's happened just east on Canis. I believe there might be a little bit more than that, but like I said, this one was done at the old Cooper Orbit intersection, not necessarily at the proposed or the Panther Branch intersection.
okay. And that would probably include the McKenzie apartments that are there. The new Cooper Orbit would include the McKenzie apartments.
Yes, and that tie,
Yeah.
that would
So that's
include that.
even
And
more.
then,
I don't know how many apartments are in there. I believe that it meets warrants today, and I understand that you've got to look at the new road and all of the situations with the new development, but these people have suffered out there a lot, so I say it's time that we add that street light.
okay. We can, like I said, it was just timing. The analysis was going to happen. It was just timing of when we're going to do it. We can do a preliminary of what we believe it may be, but it would be taking traffic that is on the existing Cooper Orbit. We wouldn't really get the traffic from the apartment complex. That's why I was saying, it could be projected, but it wouldn't be an actual measurement.
Can you not do it at McKenzie and at Cooper Orbit and combine those?
You could do that, and some of that movement may change a little bit depending upon the amount of traffic, because now they're going to have more traffic coming in that's accessing
And then
that intersection.
extrapolate those in the new subdivision.
Potentially. I'll have to get with our traffic engineers and see if we can project something out, possibly get with the developer.
Yeah.
And see if, once we do this alignment, see if we could get something projected out of what it may be.
That's what I'd like for you to do, is to do that.
Okay, I
I
think
know
we
it's
can make
not
that
going to be
happen.
the exact science, but you can do Cooper Orbit, you can do McKenzie, and then extrapolate what you expect to come from the new subdivision. which
It was
should
just
be good.
timing. I mean, we could do that prior to the tie on there and give the board a anticipated warrant analysis of what it may be, and then confirm it once the road is actually tied and the traffic is actually on it.
Okay, so how long will it take you to do that?
Well, typically, it's about 30 to 60 days to get everything out there and set up and do the counts, and it depends on who's doing the counts, whether it's city doing the analysis or if it's a requirement that we put on the developer to do the analysis.
So in 60 days, we could possibly have some information to you in regards to the warrants on the,
Yes, you could have projected warrants of what it may be.
okay, let's put that on the agenda, 60 days from today to get the results of the preliminary warrants. And you decide who does it, developer or you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. See what it means to have teamwork?
Vice Mayor Hines?
Thank you. I think it Brian up here from the applicant. And this used to be in my ward and very aware. My father lives in McKenzie Park, so I transit it. The confusion seems to be that the old Cooper Orbit Canis intersection is going away with this development, correct, Brian?
That is correct.
So you guys will close that into Cooper Orbit, make the new configuration where Cooper Orbit will meet Panther Way, which comes up on the west side of McKenzie Park.
Small detail, staff is requiring that we make the connection first before we abandon the other, so that we don't.
So before your development's finished, this road connection will be made.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to have a new, and I think the issue is, because believe me, I've driven that, I get it. The way the road, Cooper Orbit comes up from the south and it kind of curves in. And if you look to the east, Canis Road kind of has a bend in it, so sight distance is a big issue. And you also got to deal with traffic southbound on, is it Adkin? Kirby, southbound on Kirby going straight through that intersection. So there won't be that conflict. And I agree, it's going to meet warrants probably sooner rather than later, but I'd rather have it based on real data than that. And I'm comfortable because we're going to make that connection before any of those new homes in Woodlands Hills are built. And that's kind of what the discussion I've had with some of my fellow directors. And the
The site
developer.
problem is all the cars come in that you can't cross the road, if you're talking about a site problem.
Right. Well, but when you get away from that old intersection to the new intersection, because I come out of the side entrance on McKenzie just about every other day after visiting with my dad, and you can make a left-hand turn on Canis at that intersection right now. And so, and mainly because there's a lot bigger sight distance, there's more traffic turning left, right, and when you're trying to make a left turn with all that conflicting traffic movement, you're right, it's next to impossible, but you're not going to see those same conflicts to begin with at that Canis, the new Panther Way, where Panther Way comes out. So I think that's where the big confusion is. That traffic study was done for the old intersection. And I agree, they'll get traffic study, but I think it'd be better off of hard data. And you guys are participating in the signalization when it's required?
The developers committed from the previous agreement to work with the traffic signal at Woodlands Trail. Okay. And I believe that commitment is still in effect.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wyrick.
Well, I was just going to tell Director Hines, your dad's going to like me better than you.
All right, it looks like we've had all the questions from members of the board. We still have agenda cards. Mr. Graham Smith, would you like to make any comment? Mr. Bob Harden, would you like to make any comment? Oh, actually, I'm sorry, that's for another. All right. Members of the board, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Present.
Ayes have it.
Present, Mayor.
Receive that present, Director Richardson.
Mayor, could we have a recess? We've been here quite a while, and I noticed you snuck out on us, so we'd all like that same privilege.
The clerk needs to ask Director Richardson a question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moore.
The clerk needs to ask Director Richardson a question.
Director Richardson, would you like to change your vote?
No, ma'am.
We've heard the ayes. The item passes. We'll go into a brief 5-minute recess. Members of the city board, we're now back in session. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 13.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned development commercial titled National Properties Holdings, LLC, Self-Storage, PDC, located at 14508 Canis Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes, first reading.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it, second reading.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned development commercial titled National Properties Holdings, LLC, Self-Storage, PDC, located at 14508 Canis Road, second reading.
Move to place on third and final reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it, third reading.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned development commercial titled National Properties Holdings, LLC, Self-Storage, PDC, located at 14508 Canis Road, third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. Do we have any questions from members of the board? Any questions from members of the board? Director Wyrick?
Adcock, asked for this to be held separate, and she's not in the room, so can we wait for her?
Yes, ma'am.
Please, thank you.
And,
Do you have any cards on it?
no, ma'am.
No cards?
Director Richardson?
And while we're waiting, I think one of the questions was whether or not there's going to be any outside storage related to this project last week. And I think we got a memo, if I remember correctly. Bruce, you can correct me, that there will not be any outside storage at this facility. Is that correct? I think that's one of the questions that Director Adcock raised last week.
I think the developer is here to answer that.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you all for having me. No, there's not any outside storage for this facility. It's all inside storage.
Well, Bruce, did we not get an email?
Yeah, we did. We did. You did. He came to the podium, so I deferred to him. But I did send something out that said there would be no outside storage.
Okay, well, I know you, I don't know him, and I just know we got a memo from you, and that was one of the big issues, I thought, in my opinion, and allow me the right to be wrong in my opinion, with respect to approval or denial of this development last week was the outside storage, and I just wanted to make sure I was clear that we did get a memo from you saying that there will not be any outside storage.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Richardson. Director Adcock, we're on item number 13 that you wanted to held separately. Do you have any questions or concerns?
Is this the one that has the outside storage?
Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Sorry. No, ma'am.
This is all self-storage?
Right.
No, I have no question about this one. It's the one that has the outside storage. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 14.
An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes, first reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. Are there any questions from members of the board? Any questions from members of the board? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, let me first open this public hearing. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 15.
An ordinance to abandon the portion of West 19th Street right-of-way between Lot 12, Block 8, and Lot 7, Block 5, Blankenship Addition, immediately north of 1901 Leander Street in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. First reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to abandon the portion of West 19th Street right-of-way between Lot 12, Block 8, and Lot 7, Block 5, Blankenship Addition, immediately north of 1901 Leander Street in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to abandon the portion of West 19th Street right-of-way between Lot 12, Block 8, and Lot 7, Block 5, Blankenship Addition, immediately north of 1901 Leander Street in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings, and we're going to close this hearing.
I have a question.
I'm getting ready to come to that, Director Adcock. Any questions from members of the board? Director Adcock?
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Collins some questions, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Collins, do you know why the 2 people recused on this item?
Well, on the planning commission?
Mm-hmm.
No, I do not.
Okay. And the vote was 4-4?
Vote was 4-4, so they did not get their 6. Therefore, that was not approved at the planning commission.
Excuse me. Director Adcock, we're on number 15.
I'm sorry, I thought we were 16. Okay.
No, that's 15.
You can just wait then.
Yes, ma'am.
All those in favor, Director Wright?
I wanted my colleagues to know that Leander is, of course, in Ward 6, and I've met with those neighbors and talked with them, and they are all in support of this. I thought her question was about this, but none of the neighbors had any issues with this.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 16.
You have to
Open up the hearing.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned development commercial titled Cozy Spot Rentals Short-Term Rental PDC located at 319 North Summit Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. First reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned development commercial titled Cozy Spot Rentals Short-Term Rental PDC located at 319 North Summit Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third reading.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and to establish a planned development commercial titled Cozy Spot Rental Short-Term Rental PDC located at 319 North Summit Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. I will close this hearing. Do we have any questions before we go to the vote? Vice Mayor Hines?
Yes.
And Director Webb?
Yes. Tom, I have a question. So if any of these short-term rental rezonings that are coming before us, if we change our short-term rental ordinance, will they have to still wait a year, or will they be able to come in under the new ordinance to reapply?
When the short-term rental is ready to come forward, to have a clause in there that will say that the existing PUDs, which they're supposed to be anyway, would have to be subject to the terms of the most recent ordinance. And so they would all be able to work.
Right, but say if we had, because we've had several we've turned down, would those folks be able to come back and reapply under the new ordinance since we've changed it? I get that anybody that was brought in under this old process, but I'm talking about people that, normally would have to wait a year. Are they going to be able to reapply, go through the new process? Since we're changing.
You're supposed to reapply unless there's been a substantial change. If there's an ordinance that permits it, as opposed to it being worked in as a POD, I would think that would be a substantial change. And I also think that would be something we would note in the ordinance for the bed and breakfast. So that's
Okay, because it seems like we're going to have different standards going forward with whatever we come up with. So I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to call the attention of my colleagues to an email and letter they got this afternoon. I don't think everybody saw it. The Neighborhood Association was a little bit late getting it out, but they did have a meeting about a week or so ago. And in case people missed the letter, I have a copy of it, which I'm happy to share, but they do, the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association does oppose this particular project.
Thank you so much, Director Adcock.
Yes, Mr. Collins. Do you know how many we have already approved in that area?
On that specific street?
No, in that neighborhood.
In that area? If we could bring up the zoning map, it would be any planned development, residential there. I do not remember any that's approved in that area of Capitol View Stiff Station.
Well, in talking to one of the neighborhood ladies, she felt like that even though if they're not approved, there's some others in that area that's operating as one of these. So are we doing any outreach to find out how many there are going to be whenever we have our plan in place?
Yes, I can tell you that part of the ordinance that would be presented will incorporate a third-party company that would go and essentially scrub the internet to try to find rentals, short-term rentals, and give us a report as determined on whatever cycle we want it to come to us. So you don't necessarily need it necessarily every month, but you don't need it once a year. And so the more you get that report sent to you, the more it costs. I'm anticipating that we'll probably get that on a quarterly basis for us to go and investigate, so that we should be able to track what rentals are happening in any area within the city of Little Rock with that report. So that'll be part of that presentation that when the ordinance does come before the board that I will make. So we will handle it, but it will be a third-party cost associated with that.
And I'm like Kathy, I've heard from the neighborhood up there, and they think that they have enough for right now, and they would like for us to wait and see how many shows up after we do the September date. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Richardson.
Time is going to be doing this work. How much, two questions, how much is that's going to cost us, and did we seek that work through RFP, RFQ, or was that something we've done sole source, we've been able to do as a sole source agreement? So two questions. One is, how much is that costing us annually? And secondly, and probably most importantly, how did we get that funding out there or advertise it or put it out in the community? Was it done through an RFP or RFQ, or was it something that was sole source based on their expertise and the information that my colleagues are asking about? Can you answer those two questions for me, please?
Yes, sir. Currently, right now, there is not a service that we are doing for that. It is, I have went out and got pricing and updated pricing, and it depends on the timing of the report. It could be anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 a year to get a report. Depends on what the cycle is. If approved at the board when it comes through, we will seek to find that third-party vendor through an RFP process. So that has not been done yet. I was just talking about what we went out to just get initial, what could be done and initial costs so that we knew what we was dealing with when we presented the ordinance.
All right, just to be clear, we don't even have the RFP developed, much less put out, right? But we know the work. We know the scope of the work that we're going to be looking for, and we're going to seek that through an RFP, and our staff will internally develop or design the RFP to get the services that we're looking for. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Jamie.
Mayor, if I may, we probably should also cooperate with the Advertising and Promotion Commission, because the bed and breakfast use is subject to the hotel tax, and I know that Mr. Baker, their lawyer, are doing what they can to monitor it now. So if there is a cost, we ought to be able to split it.
Thank you for that notation. Vice Mayor Hines?
Yes, I just want to make more. I know we've got some neighborhood opposition, but looking at this property, and I'm just going to put my 2 cents, it doesn't look like there's any legally operated Airbnb or short-term rentals anywhere in this neighborhood. And, you know, when we've traveled, we've read them, this location seems to be the epitome of what you want in an Airbnb for a fairly high rent. It overlooks the Capitol, the river, pretty impressive home. And I know that the property owner's got a pretty big investment in this. So that's just my 2 cents.
Seeing no other questions from members of the board, we've already closed the hearing. We don't have any cards.
I think the applicant
I'm sorry, the applicant.
I think the applicant would like to speak.
Thank you so much for considering my application. I would like to give a background on this before you guys vote on it. So we've been living here, me and my wife, for more than 5 years now, and we are frontline healthcare workers. We both work in hospital. In the heels of COVID pandemic, we recognize that a lot of patients, a lot of their families who come here for treatment don't have housing. They kind of have to live in hotels, which is not ideal if you have a few family members staying there. So with that background, we sort of wanted to, and of course there is a business element to this, and that's why we went after a property that was there. And as Vice Mayor Hans described, this is a perfect location for a family with kids who want to spend a few days in Little Rock for whatever reason. We're not looking at hosting a party. We're not looking at having people spend one night. That's not what we are going to do. This is for a few days at a time. People who want to spend with their families and kids a few days. This is a 3-bedroom house. It's a standalone property. We definitely intend to screen all the renters or short-term tenants there, preferably not people who are spending one night. And of course, with the ordinance that's being proposed on the website, I followed every single thing in that, and will follow them going forward as well. We haven't started, of course, we're waiting for your permission. When we go out and go on vacations, we typically prefer Airbnb or a short-term rental in a quiet neighborhood with lots of similar families around, so that we feel safe. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do here. And I hope that message is clear. And like I said, we don't want this to become a party house, disrupt the neighbors. And we are 15 minutes away from this property. We live here in Little Rock, and we are planning to be the monitors, and we'll take good care of it. And then when we first applied, the Planning Commission approved this project. And unfortunately, one of our neighbors didn't get our letter because it went to his old address. And understandably, he raised an issue as to, I didn't get that information beforehand. And he's a pilot, and so he objected because his sleep schedule would be disturbed. But then after we talked to him, he understood what we were trying to do, and he gave us a letter of full support, and which is how we came to this point. And I hope this background is with you before you guys make any decisions. Thank you for letting me speak, and I'm here if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions from members of the board. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Hey,
Nays have it.
Roll call vote, please.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Director Wright? Director Wyrick? Director Campuris? Director Phillips?
I heard you. I was thinking.
Okay.
It's okay to take some time.
I couldn't hear you, man.
I didn't vote. I didn't vote yet.
Director Adcock?
No.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. My bad. Director Phillips?
Yes.
Director Adcock?
No.
Director Miller?
No.
Director Richardson?
No.
Director Webb?
No.
Director Peck?
No.
Vice Mayor Hines?
Yes.
4 yeses, 6 noes.
Motion fails. We'll now transition to citizens' communication. Betty, I believe it's Betty Ellie. Betty Ellie. Ellis. Betty Ellis. Seeing none. Luke Scrable.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to exercise my First Amendment rights. My subject tonight was abuse of the FOI in the City Hall. After the board meeting last 2 weeks ago on August the 2nd, like always, I always FOI the yellow cards. And as of yet, I've not received them. I have tried multiple times to ask why. I've not had the courtesy of a reply. I've made the point several times, Mayor, that you have now signed an oath of office 4 times saying that you would uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Arkansas, and you are not hired to not uphold the law. You're not hired to break the law. In the past week, Mr. Cavan is paved the way and now showed every citizen in the state, in the city of Little Rock, exactly how to take care of this problem when the city of Little Rock, and you specifically, Mayor, feel that you don't have to obey the law and that you're above the law. Arkansas Code 2519-104 shows exactly the law, and now our county prosecuting attorney is going to enforce the law for us, the citizens, when you yourself feel that you're above the law and that you don't want to obey the law. Now, I don't know why, or if there's a more simpler FOI to deliver. You just put the yellow cards on a copy machine, you press the button, and then you electronically send that to me. but for the past 12 days since I submitted that FOI, I've not been able to get those. I've sent several requests to the new FOI division in the city attorney's office, and I haven't even gotten a reply back from the city attorney's office. So I don't know what's going on inside City Hall, but it's not legal, it's not ethical. I'm appealing to the board of directors to help me, the citizens. So please obey the law. I'm waiting to get my cards from the last meeting.
Mr. Jimmy Cavan.
Board, I want to give you something that you should not have to struggle with tonight. What I want to talk to you about tonight has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with the upcoming elections. It has to do with your duty as board of directors. As you all know, recently I FOI'd all the statements for Mayor Scott's city credit cards. As you also know, what the city provided me was missing 46 statements. I advised the city of this fact, and on Tuesday, August 9th, City Attorney Tom Carpenter emailed me the body of an email City CFO Sarah Linehan had sent him earlier in that day, which I provided all of you. Her statement in that letter is stunning. Ms. Linehan states in the email that statements are missing and that during a period, individual account statements were not scanned and saved. Let me say that again. Individual account statements were not scanned and saved. The reality is simply this. Credit card statements were discarded and not retained, and that is against Arkansas state law, Arkansas Codes 1459-114, retention of documents, and Criminal Code, Arkansas Code 554-121, tampering with public record, which I might add is a Class D felony. What I'm asking the board to do tonight is not indict anyone. I'm not asking you to judge anyone. I'm not even asking you to assign blame to anyone, but to perform your duty to the citizens, to be a public servant. You can accomplish both tonight by voting to request a legislative audit. Once the board takes this action, then all of us, including you, need to just step back and let the auditors do their job. Then they will do their duty, and when done, will provide a complete report with explanation and conclusions. Then you all as a board can decide what action, if any, you all agree to take. Now, yes, is there an election in November? And some of you may be thinking this is too close to that election, that I've got an opponent. It's too risky right now. Don't. Please don't make this political. Please don't make this about your election. Please don't make this about the mayor's election. People are absolutely sick of that mentality. This is not about the election. It is about 46 financial documents that belong to the people. The people that have already, and they have been illegally discarded, thrown away. That's what this is about, not your political careers. Indulge me a few seconds, please.
Thank you, Mr. Cavan.
So now I'm asking one of you to summon the
Mr.
courage.
Cavan, your time is up.
State representative,
Your
please
time
indulge
is
me
up,
a few
Mr.
more
Cavan.
seconds to make a motion
now
that the
excused,
board
Mr.
vote to
Cavan.
request a legislative
is up,
audit
Mr. Cavan.
into the matter, that you summon the courage to second that motion.
Mr. Cavan,
They
your
have a
time is up.
discussion on the matter.
Your time is
Ask
up,
Ms.
Mr.
Lanning.
Cavan.
Have the courage to do that. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Scrable. Mr. Scrable, please excuse Mr. Scrable. Please excuse him. Members of the board.
Mayor, is that all we got?
No, ma'am. We have a presentation by the city attorney. Members of the board remember and recall that we have assigned and realigned the Freedom of Information Act office from Human Resources Division to the city attorney's office. He has already sent out a detailed memo, much of which is what I shared at the last meeting, but also I believe it was a supplement that included some future budget amendments that we will have to do to fully staff it under the city attorney's office. You all have read that. I think you've had some time to read that. And so in the essence of time, instead of the city attorney going through that in great detail, if there are any questions of the city attorney, but we'll turn over to the city attorney.
Okay, so you want me to wait for questions?
If you want to give a brief synopsis.
The memorandum set out things that I think that need to be done. Some of them are going to require people, some are going to require technology. The most important, though, I think is the first one, and that's communication. Mr. Cavan, for example, spoke tonight, and you read an email he got, and it sure sounds like our receipts have been destroyed. The statute says that it has a whole list of things, but all receipts, statements, et cetera, have to be kept for a period of 4 years, and in any event, until an audit is done for the particular year in which the receipts were kept. So what that means is they've got to be kept a minimum of 4 years. Now, we're supposed to do audits every year. And if we do audits every year, then at the end of 4 years, I can get rid of the city can get rid of a receipt I used for buying gasoline for a car while on a city trip, for example. However, if it wasn't done, if they didn't do an audit, then they'd have to keep it until an audit was done. I spoke with our finance director today and went through the statute, and it was late this afternoon just before this meeting, and went through the statute in detail, and she said, we do keep those, we keep them for a period of 7 years. Well, I call that the type of a communications problem we got to be careful about. Saying that we haven't scanned or don't have doesn't mean that we haven't kept or that we have destroyed, and we need to be precise on that. In terms of Mr. Scrable's comment, the mayor said at the meeting that this would take place immediately, and I was putting together this thing, and I really just thought that Mr. Scrable would be sent those things. On my list for tomorrow, right after I get to the office, is get the yellow cards and get them to him. Our problems with FOI, we're not going to overcome all problems with FOI, particularly in Arkansas. We've got the most demanding and the most broad FOI in the country. We're the only jurisdiction in the country where attorney-client work product is not protected under the Freedom of Information Act. If it's written, it's subject to disclosure. And that just doesn't happen anywhere. But that said, doesn't mean that we can't be a lot better at what we're doing. And in the memorandum, I tried to outline a number of things that we need to do that will accomplish two major things. One, better communication with the public, putting upon us a more aggressive questioning point when if we get asked for, we want X, and we think X means one thing and the requester thinks it means another, that's a real simple phone call or email saying, what are you actually asking for, so we can get it. And then the second thing is, if this is all put into place, then we will get the type of software packages that can keep individual departments that are hiring accountants, for example, working on accounting for the city instead of working on redacting for the FOI, and the division can redact it for the FOI, and then if we have any specific issues that we have to deal with, we will deal with them. So in the sense of brevity, my motto has always been, when in doubt, disclose. There are times when we fight it. One of those times was several years ago. A woman sent us a 911 call saying that her neighbors were selling dope and she was afraid because she thought that she would be made a victim. We did not have the tape anymore from the 911 center, but we had a card that was printed that identified it, and I refused to give it up and asked the Attorney General, and the Attorney General said, no, you've got to give it up. Well, okay, on occasion we're going to fight that because the purpose is to see how government is working. It is not to put people at risk. But absent something like that, it's pretty clear that in Arkansas, our act is to be liberally construed to meet its purpose, which essentially means things are to be disclosed. Our exemptions are contrary to the purpose of the act, and therefore they have to be clearly applicable. And there's a couple areas where they aren't clearly applicable, but where they are, that's going to be easy to redact. Where they aren't, we're going to have to make decisions, and our decisions are going to have to be made as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much. We'll now go to Director Wright.
Mayor, my comment was not on this.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Vice Mayor Hines.
But I would like Ashley to come here. I've been trying to text her and she's not paying.
Ashley, if you could come see Director Wright. Vice Mayor Hines.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Tom. My greatest concern after seeing Tom's memo is that in my recollection, since I've been on the board, we have not had a problem complying with FOI requests to this degree. It's only happened in the last several years. As Tom said, there are very few items that can be shielded from FOI, and it seems we've always operated under the do right rule where this was concerned. And if there was a question, it got escalated to the city attorney's office for a ruling. It seems that something has changed in the last couple of years as to what that process is. I've heard that there's been staff members within the mayor's office that are vetting this stuff before it's released, which there is nothing in the FOI law that says that you have to do that. I just question whether every time we have a crisis that, Mayor, you want to create a whole new department to try to handle something when I don't think it's going to, we're adding layers of more bureaucracy, and it seems like it's going to slow things down, not speed it up. And I just have an issue. The number of people Tom says he needs, I agree to it. I don't know how many people we had in HR, but generally if a custodian in the record has it, those requests go to that custodian. If they have them, they just need to turn them over. Unless it meets a certain criteria that I think the city attorney can, I just don't see a need for doing this. It used to work, and then something's changed in the last couple of years. And I think it's because things have been tried to be filtered out when they should have just been disclosed. And that's my opinion on this. And it's going to take a budget amendment from us to create this department. And I just don't understand the need for it. And you as the chief executive, Mayor, if this is what you want to do, we as the holding the financial purse strings as the legislative body, I just don't see that it's going to improve. It's going to, I think, make it worse. And I think that the simple policy needs to be, if there's a question, forwarded to the city attorney's office, otherwise disclose the documents.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Hines. You're completely incorrect. This city has had a number of different issues with FOIA. Nothing new has changed. It's happened throughout the years, and that is a matter of public record. We are making some corrections and changes to those issues. When we see an issue being handled, we notice those issues and we assign the division to the city attorney's office, which actually is probably the best thing to do in regards from a legal standpoint and a standpoint of transparency. So that decision has been made as the chief executive officer. You are correct. The board will have to vote on a budget amendment as the city attorney has shared to fund those additional positions. Again, not to go into too much detail, this city complies with FOIA completely. There are times that when there are delays, because our city staff has to not only do their day job, they also have to deal with sometimes frivolous FOIA issues, i.e., example, somebody who wants to know the letter word budget for the last 10 years. I mean, it creates a lot of staff time that you all will never realize. So I will always defend the team in that standpoint, and also recognize there are some delays. And when there are delays, we have to correct the issue. Everything has been submitted as it relates to Ms. Linehan. Clearly, as she has shared, it's due to timing of different things and the amount of work that they have to do to ensure that we keep our employees paid. So you are incorrect. Thank you so much. We'll now go to Director Computers.
Tom, one of the issues that has always come up on a yearly basis is the timeliness of responses from your office. Can you give us an idea of how you will maneuver work through your office with Alex doing this? That's my first question to you. I've got a number of others.
The memorandum was prepared with Alex Betton and Debbie Wisdom, and also in consultation with others. What we envision is this, is that we have the group that will be working on FOI. The group that will be working on FOI will basically have skill sets as they do in the police department now, and sort of along the lines of a paralegal. There will be an assistant city attorney who will be literally located with those people. There's not room in my office for those people. But everything really needs to be in one place so that all of the different types of equipment is in the same place, equipment that can redact a body-worn camera tape and an MVR tape that can redact emails automatically and capture some of the things that are problematic, that can pull the emails when they are extensive requests. It all really needs to be in one place. In terms of the police work, there are a couple of very sensitive areas where I really think we only need to have law enforcement working on them, but most of what I think the police turns over are not those sensitive areas. And I'm talking about undercover officers or informant type of identifications that, as opposed to information, whether it's an ongoing criminal investigation or not, that's fairly well defined. And if it is, there's no reason we have to have a police sergeant looking that up. I think we can have a civilian looking that up and then, dealing with the information that way. If we've got it like that, if we can do the pulls, we have to do the main pulls, if we don't have to get permissions to do so, and if we don't have to, and it's understood that a decision will be made, and then we will send the information out. I don't mind copying the information to anybody, but I think it's relatively foolish under FOI to ask or to send it to somebody for review beforehand, because you don't have time. You really don't have time.
So really you're talking about two attorneys?
Right. Alex would be the supervisor of it, since he's my chief deputy. He's here tonight. And then I want to have an attorney there in the room that we know is quite involved with this. And you might want to.
Hey, Director Computers. I would just say that I would treat this division of our office like any other division that we have. I'm the first line supervisor for our transactional attorneys, our litigators, and this would be a FOIA unit. So I would supervise it wholly, assign an attorney to work with other civilian and law enforcement personnel. And if they had any questions, concerns, or anything they needed to run past Tom or me, they could come to me first. And then if we need to go up to Tom for a decision, we would go to him. I'd also like to say that this is not something that Tom and I don't deal with on a daily basis. Internally, we answer FOIA questions for all departments all day. the public information unit of the police department has me on speed dial. I try to take care of a lot of that stuff before it has to go to him. So it's not anything that we wouldn't be doing different. The only difference is we would be dealing with the public.
So the question to either one of y'all, I presume that the team that's coming together is the team that's been in HR and whoever's in Kendra's office right now. Is that right?
What route we're looking at is we have asked that the 2 sergeants from the police department be in this group, that the FOI coordinator in HR would be there, and then there is already authorization for the hiring of another FOI coordinator. So that would be 4, and I'm asking for 3 additions to that.
So then that means when we do a budget amendment, we're going to have to backfill HR in the police department. Is that right?
I think that the second HR position is already advertised and is out there. But yes, we'd have to do something on the others.
And from the HR standpoint, the HR positions are solely for FOIA, so you're not backfilling anything. They're doing their existing position, so that's not a backfill.
Well, going back, Alex, I understand you're an outstanding litigator.
Thank you, sir.
And if something comes up, what happens if we have a big trial or we have a shortage to this responsibility? How are you going to manage that? Because all I see is that you've got 11 bosses all asking for things all the time that we want yesterday. And we're now going to take you off and do some extra things right now, even though you're doing part of it. And I understand that from your letter, the chain of command is there's someone in the middle of it. You're in charge, but if there's a disagreement, you're the arbitrator.
That's right.
Is that right?
Correct. Tom has the last say on everything.
So, I mean, I like this. I think this is great, but I'm worried about workflow coming out of your office and how you're going to compensate for that.
If you look at what's happening now, you've got sort of 13 people in the 13 departments that are initially looking at the information, that have some training in FOI but don't eat, drink, and sleep FOI. The people in this division will be eating, drinking, and sleeping FOI. So that's one thing. And I think that that's going to have a benefit overall. I will say, if you wait until the 2023 budget to get this thing fully staffed, you're going to be putting us at a...
I don't think that's even a realistic thought process on any of our part.
And then the second thing is that the technologies that are out there now for capturing data are so much better. For example, we have found at least one company that the search engines, I mean, one of them will let you have 2 or 3 or 4. That sounds like a lot, but the mayor pointed out that one of the FOI requests we got was everything that mentioned the word budget in the last number of years. Well, we have positions that are entitled budget analyst. So if they sent an email that was relatively unimportant, we got it just because the signature on the email said budget analyst. And this is the type of thing that would cut that out. That's going to take a little bit longer to get into place, but that's going to be that part. The third thing is, and I'm counting, and I may be counting improperly, but I'm kind of counting on a honeymoon period of we're going to call you and we're going to say we need help. I mean, Mr. Cavins and I were talking the other day about something, and he was asked, could something be extended? He said yes, and then the train says, well, we need another extension, and he said, nobody asked me about that one. Well, that's an easy thing to take care of. And so that's, but you're going to need a report back from us.
My next question to both of you, how are we going to know from the two of you if the workload of FOIA is too much or the workload of getting work out of y'all's office is too much? Are y'all going to report monthly, weekly, quarterly about the workflow and how it's going? Because I really worry that, we're going to get to January, we're going to come in and say, we're going to give an assessment of the legal team's situation, and we're going to say, what the hell's going on? We don't have the work. We can't get the work done. And that's a real worry. I mean, you're already understaffed. So how are you going to report back to us? How are you going to admit if you do get shorthanded?
I'm going to learn to delegate very well to Alex, and then he's going to report to you anytime you want.
And Director Capiris, I think it's also good for you to know, again, and this is probably going too much details, members of the board, I just want to just share with you how much labor intensive this process is today. And the reason why we've already purchased the next request we did this back in March, so this is not anything new. When we realized there were some inefficiencies to ensure that we can be more efficient, we can be more timely in helping with the redactions. As the city attorney has shared, this has been going on forever, for many, many years, where there are individuals in each department that are pulling and working on redaction in addition to their day job right now. So every department in the City of Little Rock government has a FOIA person that's dedicated to working staff time to pull the thousands of pages that may have the word budget, in addition to their day job of ensuring payroll is on time, in addition to make sure that an employee's benefits and time log is being attributed. So that's number one. And so with this next request, that's going to help with redaction. But what's going to really be the game changer is when we
Mayor, Next Request, that's the name of the program?
Yes, it's called Next Request. We put that out 2 weeks ago. Next Request helps with redactions. We also, as Mr. City Attorney and I have been in constant communication about for a number of different months, in regards to we have to get another software system that completely alleviates the human factor of pulling the documents in each department, which adds to more staff time than we use right now. Now, that's going to be the game changer. That's going to really take away any type of added work. But the whole goal, if the board approves the city attorney's budget, is you have a sole FOIA team, assuming that we get the other software, that all they're doing 8 to 10 hours a day is focused on FOIA, and our other city attorneys are focused on the legal work we're doing right now.
And I don't argue with anything you said, and I agree with it. My worry is that it takes manpower to punch those buttons, and it takes manpower to understand what's going on. And all I can see from our budgeting process since I've been here, Joan would agree, I know, is that we understaff the attorney's office every year, and we complain bitterly when they don't respond appropriately. And that's the one thing I want to make sure that we get out on the table right now. The two things is that I want to me, 1 of 10, I want to make sure that the attorney's office is fully staffed, and 2, that he's in charge. So if it messes up, I know who to go to. I don't have to worry about, go to Alex first, and then he'll say it's Tom's problem, and then we'll be done. So.
We're on one accord. That's the reason why we moved it to FYI. The city attorney is in complete control over it. However, I want to be very clear, as Tom has shared, there's a 3-step process. Irrespective, because we were moving this way anyway, I want to make sure we're very clear. Irrespective if it's in the city attorney's office or not, because of the inordinate amount of staff time that's going to 10,000 pages for the word budget. So just take the city attorney out of this. We were moving down this road anyway with next request, and we have to have. And so for the next, I want to be clear and just take up for city attorney, there very well could be another issue next week. And it won't have anything to do with him. It'll have everything to do that we don't have the other software system that the city of Little Rock has never had. That's the reason why we're moving towards that way. And so you'll see more efficiencies in a timely fashion once we get that software system in place. That's why I want to make sure everyone's very clear. But the goal is to not add more work to the traditional city attorney's office with the existing city attorneys, because the only city attorney right now that's going to be processing this process is Director Benton, plus the other 2 or 3 FOIA coordinators, both of which who have law degrees, that will be working with them, and they're more empowered to talk directly to the requestor. As of right now, that hasn't been the case. It's been the other departments and a lot of other layers, and so we are slashing through that red tape to make it even more timely. So I just want to be clear. If there's a delay next week or next month, until we get both software systems, we're not going to see that true system that you all may be envisioning, just to give him some cover.
And then my last question, just because I think that this has been unfortunately politicized so much. If there's an FOI request, it comes to your department and y'all handle it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Wright, you had another. Director Adcock will come to you.
Yes, I think that probably all the directors are getting tired of listening to the public ask us, what are you going to do? When are you going to do it and everything? We hear that this person doesn't get their FOIs, that person doesn't get their FOIs out. If we're asked for FOIs and Ashley spends all of her time going through our FOIs, I think it's time that we put this in a Tom's department or someplace where somebody's responsible for it. Everyone's treated the same and FOIs get out of here. Right now, FOIs wait because somebody has to see them or somebody else has got to see them. And the public out here wants us to take action to get our business taken care of and for them to get the information that they're requesting. And so I'm all for Tom and his group. I think that Tom knows his limits. I hope that Alex knows his limits. I see here, I do have questions on number 4, Tom. Are these 2 police sergeants already employed by the police department?
The 2 sergeants are already.
Okay, the assistant city attorney is already employed?
No.
But we're looking at the civilian employees. I know that HR has somebody that does FOIs. I think all the other departments. So first, will you bring in all those people already working on FOIs that has the experience in the different departments? I notice here you say a law degree. I don't think anyone has to have a law degree if they've got you and Alex. And if HR has a couple people already doing this, if the mayor's office has somebody already doing this, I would suggest that you first of all look at who in City Hall is doing FOIs and bring them into this department or this division.
Director Adcock, I basically agree with you. My understanding is it's going to be in the city attorney's office. The personnel in the police department will still be police officers, but as I mentioned earlier, I think they need to be in the same place. The FOI coordinators will be within our office. We're going to have to find where this can be, what equipment it needs, what the software is like. In terms of your question, in terms of Director Compuris' question, what I'm really hearing is, while we have to present a budget, as in the other department, to the budget process, we really need to present that same budget to the board at the same time to see if y'all feel comfortable with that, and we would be willing to do that.
Well, if these people have experience and they have been working for several years doing FOI, I think they should be given the first opportunity to move to this new division and continue. Plus, if they come from those departments, they're going to know how to retrieve information from those departments instead of hiring somebody from the outside. So please look at the employees first.
Right.
As you do this, but I'm all ready for you to get this started because I'm tired of some people coming before us every week and they can't get FOIs out from the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adcock. And just further clarification, those employees, since the actions are already taking place, what we're sharing today is for those unfilled positions that will have to come before the board for a budget amendment. So it's already in place right now. There are details as it relates to office space and equipment, but those existing employees that you referenced, they already are in place. They're not applying for anything new. They're doing the same jobs. Now the vacant positions that the city attorney is requesting, that'll come before the board for a budget amendment.
Well, I think it's time if we have to pay to make the citizens feel like we're doing our jobs, then I'm willing to pay it.
Yes, ma'am. We'll have a budget amendment discussion. It's already scheduled for sometime in September anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Director Wyrick, is your hand up? Did you already?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. A lot of questions have been answered. I just got a few little tiki dot ones. So in Tom's memo, it says that the statutory deadline is within 3 working days of the request for disclosure.
Yes.
Okay, so on my end of this process, we get FOIs, and sometimes they're pretty extensive, anything that says City of Little Rock in them. And so is there any leeway with the 3 working days? I heard you say something about calling somebody and asking for an extension. Is that what the process is? And if they agree to it, then you can do it. But if they don't agree to it, then...
If they don't agree to it and it's a really time-consuming effort, then we'll be in a position where we're going to have to file an action in court and ask for affirmative injunctive relief to give us appropriate time to fulfill it. All emails from all city employees and to all city employees for the last 5 years is one of those occasions.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that's pretty difficult. And I know probably getting from all of us to Ashley or wherever they're supposed to go has been kind of like making sausage. It's pretty ugly to get there, because I know on my computer I could send 4 or 5 messages at a time, and I know on her end it probably was awful. So I'm glad we're trying to do something to make that easier. So early on, you were talking about an audit. You said that we get an audit each year, and that if a receipt had been reviewed in an audit, then you could file those away for 4 years, I think is what you said.
You have to keep them for a period of 4 years.
And Sarah keeps them for 7 years. Okay, on an audit, now, an audit doesn't review every receipt.
That's what I understand.
They do a sampling.
Yes, ma'am.
So if an audit comes through and there's a sampling done and the other receipts or documents were not reviewed, what happens to those?
They're maintained for 7 years.
Even though there's
We
an
still
audit
keep the
and
receipts,
they weren't
whether they're
reviewed.
reviewed in the audit or not. We still keep the receipts for the 7 years.
7 years, okay.
We basically go above and beyond than what the state requires. The state requires 4 years, we keep for 7.
Well, he made the point that we do an audit every year, but we think that the audit is sampling of receipts. So I wanted clarification on that.
The other point, and Mr. Cavan, again, I didn't get a chance to talk to him before tonight, but we're going to have to be very precise in our language. You know, I can't say, I don't have those receipts, when what I'm really saying is, I've got hard copies of those receipts someplace. They're not scanned and easily available. And, you know, he's entitled to know that. And anybody that can get a document is entitled to know we've got the supportive material for the period of time we're supposed to have it. There are some legislative things that need to be done. For example, the state took care of a lot of FOI problems a few years ago by saying if the state has records online, then they don't have to be given over in terms of FOIA. You can just say they're online. And that says cities can do that too, but the requester can say that they don't want to go online. Well, I think we need to get that changed to that if we put data online, then that's it. The other thing we're going to need to do, as I mentioned in that, is we're going to have to get cloud space, because when you have to compile a great deal of information separately, then you put that on your server and we eat up our server space. But a cloud space is somehow different, and so we'll need to do that too.
Evaluate that and probably add more. Okay, and so then you made a point, I think it was under 1, it said, this discussion is relevant to a central point. There can only be one decider whether a record is subject to release or not, release is not an issue subject to a vote. In other words, if someone requests something from you, then you're compelled to provide it.
That's what the statute says.
That's what the statute says. So, I was concerned about the individuals that send me emails, and the idea that if we posted this someplace that their names might get out or telephone numbers might get out. So I might have made a decision about not forwarding that because I don't have a way to redact. And I had no idea that you all were looking at my information that I was sending and redacting names, telephone numbers, addresses out of it. So I have I have a little bit more comfort in that now. I'm assuming that's what you did. Anyway, that was a question in my mind. And I've worked with Alex on some FOI issues. I think he knows the rules. I think he's pretty sharp on that. I think he's pretty strong on following the statutes.
And he's very good about dealing with people.
Yeah, I found him pretty nice. I really did. So anyway, those were just the few residual questions I had after everybody else was asking questions. So I think it's a move in the right direction. I think it's important that we follow the FOI laws and we provide the information as quickly as possible. But I don't think people understand what a difficult process that is. And so refining it, updating it, and getting better at it is what we're talking about here. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Director Richardson?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to take a different course, and you can't answer this question. Only Tom or Bruce can answer this question. But am I the only one who remember when we had an executive session without violating the principle of executive sessions, that Dean made a motion and Jones seconded that we had an FOI administrator to your office, Tom, or vice versa? But am I misunderstanding that? Did we not deal with this about 4 or 5 years ago, dealing with your office and your office's ability to deal with FOI, and there was a recommendation made during that executive session to add an administrator to your department? And if so, if I remember that correctly, then what did that result in? And if I didn't remember that correctly, then what were we talking about that night? Because either Dean made the motion and Jones seconded, or Jones made the motion and Dean seconded, and everybody voted on that with the exception of the late great Director Hendricks. She had left by the time we got to talking about that. So Tom, this happened long before Frank was elected, Mayor Scott was elected. So can you please remind me about that experience when we tried to address FOI and the problems the city was having with FOI, and doing our evaluation of you making recommendations to add an administrator to your department to deal with FOI? Is that correct? Do I remember that correctly?
I'm not in executive sessions.
It was doing your evaluation.
I mean, except when you're evaluating me, but what I remember asking for most of the last few years, in addition to attorneys, has been paralegals. At least 4 years ago, at least 3 years ago, the concept of having an FOI coordinator for non-police information in the HR department is the route that was taken, and Mr. Moore would know more about that.
Well, Bruce, either you or Tom, because I remember us talking about that, Tom. I'm not trying to violate executive session privileges or information shared, but I somehow remember that recommendation being made to add that department, that administrator to your department to help us deal with FOI issues. I remember that specifically, and that was before Stoller was still our mayor then, and it was done during your evaluation. So I guess I misremember that, but I thought that was part of what we had talked about that night quite extensively, might I add. And did anything, Bruce, anything result anything that we've added to staffing or budget amendments or changes with respect to what we're talking about right now over the last 4 or 5 years?
Director Richardson, obviously, I don't sit in the city attorney's evaluation, so I can tell you what you all discussed with him. But I will tell you that the very concern that I think Director Campuris raised and others was just the sheer amount of workload that this takes. And it's tedious. You know, each of you all love Ashley. We all love Ashley. But when you all get that FOI request for all of your emails for the last year, well, guess who's redacting those? Or guess who's having to go through each one of those? Now, Tom said today that eventually, or Mr. Carpenter or Mr. Benton said that, eventually, if this gets staffed up, then that won't be occurring. But I still believe, again, this is all sort of news, that it's going to, some of it is very specific, some of it is stuff that, either Ashley's going to know, or if she doesn't, she's going to come ask me or Susan. So, Director Richardson, the simple answer to your question is the concern has always been just the workload, and Director Pierce raised it with just the workload the city attorney has to begin with, representing the city from a legal standpoint. And I think that, I even asked a question about the police department this morning or this afternoon. But I believe that that's sort of where the discussion has been all along, around just the workload that it's going to take.
I agree with that, Bruce. And I think that's when Lori was still our board liaison. But I thought that night there was a recommendation made to add to Tom's department the FOI administrator or FOI sub-department. And Tom, I think you're telling me that's not true. We hadn't had those talks or conversations or additions in the past 4 years.
Not to my office.
All right.
And had you made any requests? Tom, have you made any requests for additional staffing to address that to your office? Do you know about?
Right, I've made requests for additional staffing in the office. I have.
And that's to deal with these issues what we're talking about right now. Exactly. Correct?
That's just in general. I mean, please let me make this clear. If y'all want to keep FOI someplace else, that ain't going to hurt us. But if you want us to do it, what I tried to set out in the memorandum is that this has to be a division. It has to be all they do, and it has to be manned.
That's my question. And listen carefully. I'm not trying to draw this out. I'm not trying to be antagonistic. Did you make a request for staffing to deal with these FOI issues that we're talking about right now? Have you over the last 4 or 5 years? You haven't?
Not that I remember. Not that I remember.
Vice Mayor Hines.
Thank you. Mayor, I have to take issue with you telling me I'm wrong. I'm entitled to my opinion. And if you are telling me that I'm wrong, that your Chief of Staff, Kendra Pruitt, has not been approving FOIA releases through your office, then I'll admit that I'm wrong. But that is not what I have on good authority from internal sources. And I am tired of sitting up here and
again, I take issue for making
I have an opinion, and
you're incorrect. As I shared, each department has a FYA coordinator. Each department. Kendra Pruitt is not a FYA coordinator. So again, I take issue for speaking her name in that way and accusing her, because you're incorrect. None of that's true. And by the way, this administration has not added to any department that you hadn't voted for as it relates to a budget, and we have not added any department. The only department that even categorically could have been added is the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, which utilized the existing resources, so it was no new positions. So no new department. Oh, by the way, guess what? You voted for that too. So please, stop making inaccurate information, because you're incorrect.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Director Wright?
Well, I wasn't going to ask anything on this, but I think I heard Mr. Carpenter say something about something not being scanned or not being maintained. So you're saying that there are no missing records, those records are available, so why have they not been released?
From the discussion I had with Mrs. Linehan today, she doesn't know of any months where the city, for the ghost card, which is used for travel, because it's not a card, it's a number, essentially, that has never had anything added to it. There is a general, what we get from the bank, from Iberia Bank, is here's all the charges on that during a certain period of time. And it is broken out by departments. And when there was a request for Mayor Scott's information, they were requesting from the bank copies that would only show Mayor Scott's information, when in fact there was a several-page document that showed everybody's information. The way the FOI request was made, we would have either given the guy 1 page or 2 pages with everything redacted except the mayor's department, or we would have given him however many pages there were with everything redacted, and then we would give him the front page showing the month with everything redacted for those months where the mayor did not make any charges. But what she said to me today was, and she actually showed us copies of these things, that was how that was being done. The problem is, as she said, when you say we don't have any statements to a populace that gets a statement each month from the bank, whether they've got 5 cents, $5 or nothing, or from a credit card, they'll send you 4 pages to tell you don't know anything that month. It's kind of hard to believe that a multi-million-dollar corporation like the city doesn't get the same thing. Well, it sort of does and it sort of doesn't. Part of it's nomenclature. It's not an intent to hide, but a statement like, we don't scan these documents, leads to an ambiguous conclusion, we've destroyed the documents that we had, when in fact, we've got the supporting documents, which we have to keep for 4 years and we keep for 7 years. They're just not like they ought to be. And those are nomenclature and policy things that just kind of need to be straightened out and uniform throughout the city.
Thank you.
Well, that clarifies that, but that's all I had on that. But I don't know about y'all, but I'm ready to go home. No, I just, Ashley, will you pass that out? This is prior to the election, I had some recommendations for the second tranche of the ARPA funds, and I had asked that be tabled until after the August 9th millage election, because I did not want our citizens to become confused about this. But I would like to present this to each of you tonight, and I'd like it to be added to the agenda for our for discussion, Mr. Moore, on the 30th, if that's possible. So I just wanted you all to have this and be able to review it. But it's the same thing that I presented before, and I was operating under the understanding that we wanted to keep some funds in reserve and not allocate the whole thing. But I do want to honor a commitment to our senior citizens for a allocation for a senior center, and that is a part of this. And I also want to see some upgrades to our baseball fields. I continue to get complaints from parents that play out there about the condition, and when they see us constantly allocating different pots of ARPA money out for other parks, they just don't understand why a park in their community can't get any of it. And so I just want to give you all this and ask you all to review it, and hopefully we can discuss it on our next agenda meeting.
Mr. Moore, you wanted to make a comment?
No, I was just going to get a copy. I do want to make a comment before we adjourn, but
I can't get up.
okay, I'll get it.
I can get up, but not without some struggling.
Mr. Moore?
Mayor and members of the board, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the citizens of our great city and the city board for unanimous support of the bond issues last Tuesday. It was overwhelming success with all 6. So I do want to sincerely say thank you to our citizens and to the city board. In addition, Ashley will work with each of the ward members to set up the subsequent meetings in each ward that we committed to during the initial presentation. We'll do that over probably the next 30 to 45 days to talk priorities around streets, drainage, and parks. So again, thanks to this board and thanks to the citizens of our city for a great, successful vote last Tuesday.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Before we adjourn, again, I want to thank the members of the board for having an in-depth discussion in regards to the FOIA process. Unfortunately, politics have flown in the face of the spirit of the FOIA law, creates some unburdensome staff time. We do believe these efficiencies that have not happened over the history of the city will hopefully be better as we become more timely in this process. Meeting adjourned.